Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Troutdale Budget Committee for Monday, April 21st, 2025. If we get a roll call, please.
Chair Whitmer.
Here.
Councillor Andrews.
Here.
Councillor Allen.
Here.
Councillor Lund.
Present.
Councillor White.
Here.
Councillor Davidson. Councillor Laney.
Here.
Annie Stephenson.
Here.
Jean Bent.
Here.
Chris Barney.
Here.
Victoria Rizzo.
Here.
Rich Allen.
Here.
Heidi Timberman.
Here.
Paul Wilcox.
Okay, we have one.
Okay, Mr. Chair, tonight we have our regulatory requirements right around the corner for public comment on the budget, and then a few follow-up items, and then continue the committee discussion. So if you would open the public comment period for this evening. Comments on the budget are in order, but not other city issues, and we need to make sure we touch base. I believe we have written comments that Kenda has received that she's distributed, and I don't know if we have Zoom commenters, but we certainly have plenty of folks in the room. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. At this time, I would like to open the public comment period on the proposed budget for City of Troutdale for 2025-2026. Comments are strictly about the budget or items in the budget, and any citizen may speak to any item relative to the budget. And just before I go ahead and open this up, I just want to say I did have somebody ask me about the budget committee electing to cut the Parks Department. And this committee did not even take an action, didn't even talk about cutting the Parks Department. We talked about trying to balance the general fund, of which parks and many other things were a part of that. But the comment that came back to me was that we were going to cut the entire Parks Department, and I honestly don't know where that came from because it wasn't from this body. And so at this time, we received written comments, and I think everyone got a copy of those, included with their agenda for this evening. I believe there's 3, correct? I think that's 4. And then, did you receive any others, Kenda?
We received the email and Gail Stevens is going to be speaking with
Okay. So that's a comment for what she's going to bring up during public comment. All right. And so at this time, we will start online. Is there anyone online wishing to address the budget committee this evening? Unmute yourself. Oh, there we go. Good evening.
So I'm up.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, let's kick things off with a blast, right? First, I want to thank everyone on the budget committee and city staff for all their work on the budget process. I know it's a ton of work. There was discussion last week about how the voters should decide what they want, and I agree with that. But at the same time, I'd ask the committee, is it even possible to get a ballot measure in front of voters in time for next year's budget meetings? Or are the decisions made tonight really a 2-year, let's wait and see what the voters decide decision? And I would argue that waiting what could be 2 or even 3 years isn't necessarily being responsible. If the city goes that long and reduces reserves, what happens if the voters turn it down, whether it's a fire district or increased property taxes? I mean, and looking at how hard it was for Gresham in relatively good times to narrowly get that approval, what happens, if it's 4 years before Troutdale voters approve any additional spending? Wouldn't it make more sense to spend less now so that even bigger cuts aren't needed later? And please remember that there's lots of Troutdale residents out there that simply don't have extra money to pay higher property taxes, whether they're on a fixed income or working 2 jobs to make ends meet. So the decisions the budget committee makes tonight may add costs to already rent and mortgage burdened residents. And, that puts them into a bad spot. What are they going to choose? And I'm the one that was, commenting about parks cuts, and I certainly didn't mean that parks should be entirely cut. My point was that compared to fire, police, and infrastructure, I think those need to be protected first, and then whatever's left over, we can put into other programs. And I also, just to be perfectly clear, I didn't want to imply that parks or economic development and tourism or any of those other ones should be completely cut. It was just that there has to be some kind of decision if you're going to look at, how long does it take for somebody to get a fire truck to your house versus, maybe some of the park trails get run down or don't get mowed as often. I mean, it seems to me if you don't have police and fire and infrastructure, the rest of it doesn't work in the way it's supposed to. And then one last point I wanted to make is I hope the committee will think in the long term. Residents are about to be told to pay more on their water and sewer bills, and that's assuming that city council approves it. But then they're going to come back and ask residents for even more to create a fire district. So think about the optics. If the city doesn't demonstrate in some very visible ways the cuts they've made, it's going to make it even harder to get voter approval. And that puts Troutdale in an even worse position. So while the decisions and choices tonight aren't easy, they're likely going to get even a lot harder and more drastic the longer you wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online wishing to speak to the budget committee this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will go in chambers, and I will start with the alternate, Mr. Kevin Minkoff.
Thank you. Do I need to grab a microphone or come sit here?
You need to sit there.
Kevin Minkoff, Budget Committee alternate. First off, I apologize for having to leave early last week. It was a medical appointment, and I know that I missed probably the last 17 hours of Budget Committee hearings last week. But this week, my question is, in looking at the budget and doing some cursory calculations, I see that there's a total of $18.3 million in contingencies total in the budget. Contingencies are there in order to cover both funds that are needed, that are restricted by either the legislature or by promise or by bond issue. So but I don't see anywhere in that budget where it describes what items in there are restricted of that $18.3 million, which is 23% of the budget. If there is $2 or $3 million that is not restricted in any of the various funds that you have, then that money is available, could be used for police and fire. I checked with the state budgeting agency, of which I took some classes, and they said there is nothing in Oregon local budget law that would prevent the $3 million or the $1 million that are in parks to be transferred to the general fund and used for police and fire. So I'd like to know how much of that $18.3 million is restricted based on what the Budget Committee has promised to voters and various other regulatory requirements. The other issue that I have has to do with, I know there's a regulatory necessity for unappropriated funds. So that's the cash flow timing part of the budget where money is required, and there is a formula for calculating that says we need those funds to become available at the time the requirements are needed when the resources have not yet been received. But once those funds are received, those monies are freed up. So that, and there's another $15 million of unappropriated funds, and I wonder, is there any timing issue? It's really a cash flow issue, is unappropriated funds. That's a secondary comment or question that I have. I do know there's regulation involved in calculating unappropriated funds, so they may not be available whatsoever. But again, I come back to how much of that $18.3 million is available that can be transferred and used in the general fund.
And the 18 million
Yes,
is which figure?
if you add up the contingency funds out of every single budget, I have it on my computer, I can read them to you very quickly.
No, it's okay.
But if you add up contingency, there's $3 million, for example, of contingency funds in the general fund. There is $1 million, I think, in the parks fund. There is 200,000 in this one and 600,000 in another one and 500,000 in another one. And that is all earmarked for what if, the what ifs. We run over budget on this or that. That's what contingency. And there is no law that prohibits, other than the general restrictions based on bonds. If a bond is issued for parks, then those funds must be used for the park department. But in lieu of anything like that, any kind of restriction, those funds can be moved to the general fund. As I said, I researched. There is no local budget law that restricts moving unearmarked funds to the general fund to pay for police and fire. So, but you add it all up and it comes to $18.295 million.
Okay, and so I'm just trying to clarify, I'm not trying to,
Yeah, that's okay.
the state told you that money could be moved like from the sewer fund to the general fund?
Correct. If it was not restricted by some other means, such as a bond where you're promising, you've put something before the voters and they voted on an assessment, for example, and told the voters, this is going to be used strictly for sewer, then it cannot be redirected to some other source. But if those funds are not so restricted, they can be moved to the general fund.
Okay, we'll just end with this. As far as I know, when you collect funds like for sewer service, those are required by law to go into the sewer fund.
Well, and I'm not disputing that. I'm saying that much of the $18.5 million or $18.295 million may be so restricted.
Okay.
So my question is, how much of the 18.295 is not so restricted? And can't we discuss that we can move those funds into the general fund and cover police and fire?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I guess we'll start. Next, just come up and sit down and state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Frank Stevens. I'm looking around, I see some familiar faces. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a 34-year resident of Troutdale. Also a retired veteran of 40 years. I'm a property owner, and I have a fixed income that I rely on, as well as some of the discussions we had last week, pointing that out. I want to highlight last week, if you have an opportunity to review the minute or the video from last week, I recommend you go to the 328 mark and start looking at Councillor White's comments about needs and wants and the discussion that totally changed where you guys were going with the budget conversation. So with that in mind, I just wanted to highlight my work with parks over the past 6 months as a volunteer. I've been volunteering with them for 1 day a week, about 8 hours, helping them out wherever I can. In the course of that, I've gotten to know that we have 22 parks, 183 acres. I've had a chance to read the master plan for parks and understand that we are way behind, actually, rather than even equal in where we're at with parks for FTE. So we have 6 currently, and they've been that way since 2015. If anything, we should be looking at increasing them in the budget, not decreasing them in the budget. Add that to the fact that we're gonna add the Chop Chop Trail and the Sandy River Trail to the equation. And yeah, this is where parks is gonna be our moneymaker. Infrastructure is a definite part of that. And the parks, as they work with Public Works, I saw a lot of the committee focusing on the positives and negatives rather than seeing how Public Works, parks, community development, recreation, all of those things are intertwined. So when you start thinking in terms of absolutes, it really is not looking at the culture of Troutdale as I see it, especially on the historical value part of it. So in conclusion, I just want to make a comment about specifically the Starbucks comment and how we relate a cup of coffee at Starbucks with a credit card to how our parks is allocated as far as the budget goes. I disagree with that. I don't think that's the case. I think they are actually where we should be focusing our efforts, and they are a central part of the heart of this community. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Stannard. I've been a resident here for almost since the 1970s. I was on the Parks Board for 20-some years, and I've seen us really grow from a town of 6,000 people to, 16,000 now? And our built-out rate is 20,000, if I heard that statistic somewhere. But I heard exactly what Tanny said, that we were going to defund all of the Parks Department. And I didn't believe that, but I just want to make sure that everybody realizes that it's a big part of Troutdale. That's why people come out here to get out of the concrete jungle, as our parks. I mean, from the Glen Auto to the Mayor Square to Imagination Station, they see a lot of traffic. So any cuts you make along those lines, I'd be careful. They have restrooms, they have graffiti, they have maintenance, and if you have to dip into our reserves to keep some of that, we'll do it. I realize that, we're low-lying fruit when it comes to the budget. You've got your police, fire, and water, but we're in the top 4 as far as I'm concerned, and I just want you folks to give it as much consideration or recommendation as you can to the city council, because I know they have the final say. But you guys are a big part of that, and thank you for your time and service for the city of Troutdale. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Hi, my name is Gail Stevens, and I am also been a 34-year resident of City of Troutdale. We've raised, my husband and I, bought our first house and only house here in the City of Troutdale, in a wonderful double cul-de-sac with all of our neighbors. I have also been a budget officer for the last decade. I have included in the documentation or the public comment that I place, the last decade I have spent time looking at budgets for both the state and Department of Human Services with 2 of their largest programs on a biennial basis for a small entity here in Portland called the Oregon Commission for the Blind, who has 78% federal money, and I did all of the federal reporting as well. I have done budgets. I love budgets. I actually love budgets. But I've also done local government budgets, and I did 3 a year in my last role. So I get this document. So I took a different look at it than everybody else did. When I looked at this document and I looked at, you have to understand that budget is not what you actually are gonna spend. Ray made two statements at the Wednesday, or the beginning Monday meeting. He made two statements you need to keep in mind. One, he doesn't let them go around in the last 2 months of the fiscal year and just start spending their budget because they hadn't gotten around to it. Okay? Second, I have to look at my notes. Second, expenditures in a budget are always more than what you're gonna spend. Always. So with that said, and I've done budget documents, and I have been beat up at budget committee meetings and board meetings. So I understand the angst that goes with a budget document. People think that this means we're gonna have no money left when the fiscal year is done. If you even look back at the financial statements that Eric provided you at the end of the last fiscal year we closed, we're just gonna look at that, okay? Revenue, based on what he projected in budget and what actuals were, your actual revenues for general fund only, and I'm only looking at general fund, was 5% more. 5% of the budgeted revenues in this budget proposal in front of you is $860,000. Guess what that pays for? The $850,000 that Tanny and Eric has said is part of the unbudgeted portion that that was presented and included in what you were looking at last Wednesday. Revenues will come in above the budgeted amount. Typically not much. But if Eric budgets the way that I always budgeted, you're always conservative with your revenue. You expect to have some money come back in. And I have a feeling that Eric was as conservative as I am. Then we're gonna look at what did they actually expend out of that budget that was approved for 23-24? Okay, that budget 23-24, the adopted budget had a deficit of $3.6 million. 3.6. It got adopted with $3.6 million as a deficit. Do you know what your actuals came into? You only spent 74% of what was budgeted for expenditures because Ray, Eric, and every one of the staff members behind us ensure that anything that they spend is what they really need, not just because they have budget for it. So if you apply that 74%, okay, you're gonna have a positive variance of $3.5 million in just the general fund. It's not gonna be a negative impact. What this budget is proposing, and Ray said it very clearly at the very beginning, you will not spend all this money. You will only spend, even if you spend it at 85%, which is kind of at the top of what I've seen happen in local budgets, 85% of it, I believe in my calculations. I was transparent. I gave you my calculations. Tanny, feel free to have fun at tearing it down and looking at it and seeing why I looked at it this way. What I'm saying is that this budget, yes, the expenditures are over revenue. However, this city and the people who work there aren't going to spend it just because it's in the budget. They're going to be very thoughtful about everything they buy because they do it today. They don't wait till the end of the year and then go around spending it. So I really encourage you to not be afraid of kind of talking to the city members. I really don't want to go backwards for the city. They have done so much work in economic development and community activities and our parks. I walk our parks every day. Please, this budget proposed with your small edits, put your 850 in, adjust 175s, do those things, cutting line by line, nickel and diming this to death is discouraging and a morale impact for staff that work for the city, and two, does not do the city anything. They're not going to spend it just because it's budgeted if they don't need to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Go ahead, you're there. Okay.
My name is Connie Post, and I'm a recent resident. I'm going on in August of 22nd. I will have been here for 3 years. I moved here from Idaho, probably a whole different ecosystem, but I have lived in the Northwest before. The reason I bought the house that I bought is that it was across the street from CP4. CP4. Do any of you know what CP4 is? SP? Oh, Frank. SP4, which is the Pacific Palisades entrance to the Beaver Creek Canyon. Now, I don't know if you guys know what a gem walking down into the Beaver Creek Canyon is, but you can breathe down there. It is an ecosystem of the Northwest at its greatest. It's amazing. People who visit me from the desert part of Idaho are just blown away by it, and that it's in my backyard. I would really be heartbroken to see the bridge, which is planned, which I was told that it was going to be under construction and had been delayed, and then the price had gone up. It's only going to go up more. And I would hate to see it canceled. It's an educational spot for the children on field trips, nature field trips. Everybody learns differently. That's all I'm going to say. It's, you know, it is a gem that the city and any big metropolitan area has.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, please.
Good evening, Chair Stephenson, members of the Budget Committee, Mayor Ritma, members of City Council, and members of the public. My name is Paige Campbell, and I proudly serve as the president of AFSCME Local 3132. I represent hardworking public employees who serve this city every day, often behind the scenes, but always at the heart of what makes Troutdale a place worth living. I'm here tonight to strongly urge you to protect funding for the Parks Department, First Friday, and community events from the proposed budget cuts. These are not just line items on a spreadsheet. Our parks are where kids grow up, families gather, and neighbors connect. They're essential to public health, safety, and community well-being. The people who maintain them, our city workers, do so with dedication, care, and pride. In the last meeting, a comparison was made suggesting that our parks are a daily luxury, a mere indulgence, and with all due respect, that misses the point. Our parks are vital to the health and well-being of our community. They aren't an extra. They are the spaces that make Troutdale a livable, connected, and thriving place. Cutting funding to them means cutting access to the very spaces that keep our community strong. First Friday and other community events bring our city to life. They support small businesses, build relationships, and create lasting memories that make people proud to call Troutdale home. These events are an investment in the long-term health of our city's economy and culture. And they don't just happen. They're made possible by the hard work of public employees who care deeply about this community. These programs are part of what gives Troutdale its identity, and they're what many residents love most about living here. One local resident said about Glen Otto Park, "I have used this park for parties, Girl Scouts events, Boy Scout events, and just hanging out with my kids. It's beautifully kept and landscaped with toys for the kids, covered areas, and more." When you're cutting funding to these programs, you're not just cutting services, you're cutting jobs, and you're cutting pride, and you're cutting the very things that keep Troutdale vibrant and connected. We understand the city is facing difficult financial decisions, and we don't take that lightly. But I urge you to consider not just what these programs cost, but what they're worth. Cutting them may offer short-term savings, but at the cost of long-term connection, morale, and growth. Please explore other options before cutting the programs that keep our community strong and our public spaces thriving. Our workers are committed to Troutdale, and we ask for the city's commitment in return. Thank you for your time and your service to this community.
Thank you. Next, please.
Bruce Watson, I've been a resident of this city for 44 years. And we are talking about the budget here. What we're not talking about is who is going to pay. These people in the Parks Department are here on a false rumor. And I resent that they're here saying that we're going to cut the parks. We're not going to cut the parks out of the budget. And as a longtime resident, and have been a part of this budget committee at one time for 6 years. We should be figuring out who's paying for this. And sooner or later, it's going to come out of somebody's pocket, either mine, yours, or some part of the city itself. Now, I don't care where it comes from, the contingency fund or not, but the general fund should pay for all of it. I'd like to ask Tanny how much is in the general fund and how much we pay out of that for cities, for the fire and police, percentage-wise. Do you know?
I'll get to that.
Okay. But whatever it is, we should continue to pay out of that general fund as much as possible. Now, the other 3% that they were, or $3 per thousand that they were asking, that we possibly tax ourselves, why don't we cut city salaries by 3% and cut each budget by 3% if it's that drastic? I think that it could be done, but it would not be the situation I'd like, but somebody is going to pay for it. Either the taxpayers of this city, and I'm willing to pay it as long as the original funds that come out of this come out of the general fund and not give the city a big slush fund to spend as it sees to willy-nilly. I spent 20 years with Amtrak, and we were always under threat of being cut and put out of business, and they still are 50 years later. So I've lived under this supposed threat, and yet I seem to have survived. I spent 20 years there. And I've lived in this city for 44 years, and I moved here because it was a nice place to live. But this wrangling over who gets what out of the budget, somebody's going to take a bite out of it, out of our pocket, whether it's a city that ends up paying or a combination of both. But I'm willing to, as long as the original intent of this money that's being spent comes out of the general fund. And if we have to add any additional taxes to that, that we go to the voters and say, look, we've got this problem. Here's how we solve it. It didn't work with the county of Multnomah. And it didn't work as well with the city of Gresham as we'd like because they asked too large of an increase. And we've tried to negotiate it down, but it's not working. And put it in those terms so they know what the heck they're voting on. Don't flim-flam the voters if you have to go to them for money. That's all I've got to say, so thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Okay. Seeing none, at this time, I will close the public comment period for the budget for the fiscal year 2025, 2026.
Okay. So, there we go. Got budget committee duties. So we talked about before, the four primary: receive the budget document and budget message, hear and consider public comment, which we've received each of the 3 nights, discuss and revise the budget, and ultimately approve the budget and property taxes that are remaining 2 tasks for the budget committee this cycle. So some follow-up items. Just wanted to make you aware that as the city council knows, we've been going through a process to prepare for the recruitment of our next city manager, and that material got launched late this afternoon and will be further distributed starting tomorrow. I guess I just wanted to respectfully mention to the committee and the council that not only are we going to heavily scrutinize candidates with multiple interview panels, any of the candidates that we would likely want to hire are going to be doing their due diligence on the city. And certainly the city's financial condition would be one of those considerations that they're going to look at, whether they decide to apply or whether they decide to continue in their application process or withdrawal. So as you make your considerations and your discussions and potentially statements, I would just make you aware that candidates may very well tune in and review the videos and tune in and review city council meetings between now and budget adoption to determine what are the decisions that this city makes and how does it make them. So this is the follow-up item. This is sort of where we left things on last Wednesday night. The preliminary budget as proposed, backing out the contingency, we have the $1.3 million deficit. The discussion of restoring the bond subsidy and then offsetting that with a reduction to the funding for the Beaver Creek Bridge, followed by the additional of the $75,000 for the public safety studies, potentially for police, for fire, for a combination of them, offset by their $25,000 that was already in the proposed budget for a fire study. The reduction of the $50,000 of legal services that was discussed, the elimination of the $50,000 allocated for the Imagination Station repairs based on the discussion that wasn't something that could actually accomplish anything worthwhile in terms of spending the funds. And then the $850,000 incremental that I've mentioned a couple of different times, that is the difference between the number we had when we went to the printer with the proposed budget and the number that's in there, which is what starts the 4.3 million deficit, and the most recent quote final offer from the MCSO. So that brings us.
Excuse me, Eric, let me clarify, so we don't misunderstand. It's not a final offer. It is their most recent offer, and we are preparing a response and hope to get that down below that number as a difference, but that is their current offer. Thank you, Eric.
So it won't go above that?
Correct. Go ahead, Eric.
So that's sort of reflects the current, if I assume the various conversations that have occurred, that changes where the next year ending fund balance would be. We had the 7.2 was the previous number. This again assumes those 3 items. So with that, it's to you, Mr. Chair, for
Okay, thank you.
committee discussion.
Just to clarify a few things, there was something that came up about the comment about Starbucks. And that was made by a citizen during public comment. And they have the same rights that all of us do. We can basically come up here and say within reason whatever we want to this committee. And so it wasn't something that the committee did, it was something that a member of the public did, and we all have the same rights, and so that's just kind of how things go. I'll say this for everybody's benefit. I've been doing this quite a while, and this is a really tough job. And it's getting tougher. And there isn't anything in this book that isn't passionate to somebody. And what I mean is maybe it's you, maybe it's a vendor, maybe it's your neighbor, but everything in here is passionate to somebody. And I do agree with there's what we can do, there's what we have to do, there's what we want to do, there's what we should do. It all goes down the line. And this committee is responsible, like it or not, for prioritizing those things. And as much as you don't like it, police and fire have gone through the roof. These costs have gone up astronomically. And there's also a balance here too, because we talk about not spending all the money, and you know what? Staff doesn't spend all the money. They're great at not spending all the money. But there's two things that we have to consider with that. One, the money gets appropriated, which means that it can be spent. And if we appropriate all the money and it does get spent, what happens? Frankly, one of the first things would be there wouldn't be any money to pay payroll. I know that sounds really out there, but that's one of the things that could happen. And Ray, I love him, but he won't be here in a few months. Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, we've got a possibility of changing fire service, police service, city manager. We've got a whole bunch of things up in the air that we're trying to deal with. And believe me, we are trying to balance this the best we can. And we're trying to be as responsible as we possibly can. But at the end of the day, we are spending more money than we are bringing in. You look at like this budget that we're finishing up, that's going to be 1.7 million. More went out than came in. This next one, we're looking at, right now, over 4 million. And even if none of the contingency got spent, that'd still be over 1 million going out. And so there's some tough decisions that have to be made because the money that we have in the bank is going down. And when it comes to things like, frankly, starting your own police department, possibly starting your own fire service, those things take money. And, this has been hard for us because nobody wants anything cut. One of the things we've cut so far is we've cut police. And believe me, that's not an extremely popular decision with anybody. But that's one of the things we felt we needed to do. And so this isn't, I just want to say, this isn't directed at public works. It's not directed at administration. It's not directed, at parks or anybody. We're just trying to do the best we can with what we have. And, we're not Multnomah County. We can't go around and ask everybody to help us pick up the shortfall. Besides that, I don't think they'd answer the phone if I called them anyhow. But this is just the situation that we're in, and we're trying to manage it as best we can. And you guys know this, if you don't have money at home, you put it on a credit card, or you don't buy it, or you do something. But we're in a position now where we've got to do some things short-term to get to long-term. We know what we need to do as a city long-term, but we've got to get to that point. And, we've got to do that for everybody. It's not about the people in this room, it's about the 16,000 people that are out there. And again, we're trying to balance this as best we can. It's not easy. If it was, we'd just do it. And everything would be great. And some cities have that luxury, some cities don't. But believe me, there's budgets that are worse than this, and there's budgets that are better than this. Where do we rank on the scale? I don't know. But you know, one of the things we're doing now, and still gonna have a deficit, is we're adding a utility fee. Some other places have done it, we've never done it before. This is a new one for us. Again, we're doing the best we can with what we have. And that's what we're gonna try to do. And I appreciate each and every one of you. I really do. I don't know all of you, and I know this committee appreciates every one of you. And especially for coming down here tonight, a whole lot better things to do than doing this. But this is what we do. Do you have comment? Or?
No, I'm just, I finally turned around, so I'm
Okay.
in
A lot of people back there. But I mean, and we have less flexibility than what you think, okay? We have to keep 4.1 million in the bank. Two things happen if we don't. One, we probably can't pay payroll, which to me is like the worst thing ever. And the second thing that happens is our bond rating goes down. So if we borrow money, it costs us a lot more because we're not considered to be very creditworthy. And so that's the bottom line. When we look at how much is in the general fund, that's it. That's the floor. Can't go any lower than that. So we have to make sure that we don't go that low. And, you know, right now, if we don't change some things, we're going to be that low in T minus, by my calculations. What would this be? This would be 2 years and 3 months. So we got to make sure that doesn't happen, okay? All right. I'm done barking now. Okay, does anybody have anything before we start going through line items?
I have a question.
Okay, wait,
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I can't, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. If people want to, we will try to open a public comment period later in the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, but I just can't do it
I just had a
outside
suggestion.
of that time. Okay. Mr. Allen, please?
Yeah, so as a general rule, my philosophy, I haven't been doing this as long as some of the others, but since 2008. And my general philosophy is I like to keep things very stable, as smooth as I can. The comments were correct. We always have this cliff a few years out that we're going to hit, but that appears at every budget cycle. You would agree with that. The city is ran very conservatively. We don't usually spend what we got, but we do need to be responsible. Is this year any different than any other year? Maybe because we got the police and the fire to deal with, but, you know, we usually have 2 or 3 meetings anyways. That's not unusual. I think 3 is quite common. I do think that we do have new people. We probably should have a little bit of explanation of what contingency is and how that can be spent. Because you see quite a bit of it in here. It's around 20 million, right? So we should probably have a little explanation of what it takes to spend contingency. And I think what we're asking for is basic being conservative. I didn't hear anybody suggesting anything drastic other than what we normally go through every budget cycle. So maybe Eric, if you can respond to that.
Sure.
Yeah, if you want to, you can, or I can do it.
Take a look at page 32. Right-hand column, which is the manager's proposed budget, bottom says $8,700,000 and change. We go up 2 lines, that's the contingency line. At 19,800,000 or 983. That's the total contingency across all of the funds. In answer to one of the public comment questions, the amount of that that's restricted is 100%. the money that's in each of those siloed funds is in those funds because there's a special revenue fund, there's an enterprise fund, there's an SBC capital fund, funds, there's the utility undergrounding fund, all of those funds collected money based on a specific criteria, a specific fee that was approved in the municipal code and by resolution. And so the money is restricted to that function and that purpose. If there was unrestricted funds in those funds, then sure, they could be transferred elsewhere. But the nature of them is that they're restricted to that purpose. You can't take money from the water reimbursement SPC fund and transfer it over and use it for park maintenance. Violates what's in the municipal code and state statute and so forth. As it relates to contingency is under the budget law terminology, it's a requirement.
Hang on a second. Wait for that to finish, because they can't hear online.
Speaking of that, I guess I should have had the microphone, but
You've got it.
contingency is a requirement under the local budget law as part of how resources and requirements balance, but it is a contingency is an appropriation category, cannot be spent by staff. You don't ever actually buy any contingency, whereas you actually purchase personnel services, you actually purchase materials and services, you actually have capital outlay, you actually have debt service. Those are all the other categories of expenditure. Contingency is a category of expenditure that we transfer money from into one of those other line items. Earlier this budget cycle, the council transferred money from contingency in the various funds as it related to the adoption and approval of the collective bargaining agreement that was negotiated last year, because the budget was adopted before the contract was known. But staff didn't do that. Staff brought the information. That was done based on the city council resolution. And that's the only way that contingency can be accessed. So that $19,983,638, if I can read my own numbers there, all of that is accessible, but only based on a city council resolution. Does that answer your question, Member Allen?
Yes, it does, because I really wanted some awareness to that. It has to be there in the budget, or we can't do anything, right? We're kind of stuck. But if it's there, then council, if they come up with something that they didn't know about, they can transfer from contingency to one of those other buckets within a fund, right?
Correct.
And the reason why I think it's been higher the last couple of years is we have a lot of unknowns right now. And so we have to be prepared for those unknowns, just in case we get caught in a situation that we just don't have the money for it. And we don't really have a choice. And so city council would have to deal with that. Is that a fair statement? Greg?
Well, the contingency in the general fund, that certainly has been the case for the last few years. The large amount of that contingency, a lot of it's related to the specific dedicated capital funds. And so the money is in there so that it is available should a large infrastructure requirement happen, because we have some big development that shows up since the budget was adopted. And in order for the city to accommodate that, they need to do some infrastructure investment, but that was not a project that was known at the time the budget was adopted. So rather than telling the developer, the project, to say, no, sorry, we can't help you, come back in a year, the council can then transfer money from contingency into the capital outlay for that particular infrastructure item, whether it's stormwater or sewer or water. But that's where the big dollar amounts are for that 19 million. One of the biggest individual ones is the utility undergrounding fund. Because it's collected for the purpose of undergrounding utilities, and, we can't do that until we can get an agreement and a project and so forth with PGE, and so anyway, I'm rambling, my apologies.
Mr. Young?
Thanks, Danny. I just wanted to make sure everybody understands, the contingency in the general fund is not a one-way street, which means is that in the general fund, there are hundreds of line items in the general fund, you understand? Now, some of those line items will go over what we budgeted in this document. When they go over what's budgeted in here, then we have to come to the council and ask them to adjust the budget line items for the amount that was actually spent, and that money comes out of contingency. But when I say it's not a one-way street, remember that if we have 100 line items and 10 of them go over budget, that means pretty much the other 90 went under budget, which means is we essentially are paying back the contingency by spending under budget on the other line items. So just understand, it's not that you approve a budget and then we add to it the contingency, because quite frankly, we almost always every year have lots of minuses from those budget line items. So the contingency that we spend is canceled out by at least or more than other underages in all the other line items. So I think it's important to remember that contingency is not just added to the budget necessarily at the end of the year, but it's offset.
To add to that, the 4.1 million that Chair Stephenson was referring to is just the operating capital that we need in order to go from when the budget year starts to when we start this.
Right, because our property taxes don't come until after November, and that's why the proposed budget that we put out here for you, it provides for a $7.1 million ending fund balance at the end of this budget year. Some adjustments with the sheriff's office and things like that, but we're going to be still at the end of next budget year under the proposed budget, several millions of dollars over the $4.1 million. Again, as Tanny says, it'll start going down if we don't do something with increasing income, but we're not going to be approaching that in this budget.
Yeah, that 4.1 is what I would consider R0.
Yeah.
And I've never seen the city violate that ever.
Right.
Mr. Chair, can I ask, where is this 4.1? I don't know what it's referring to.
The 4.1.
I guess that's an ask question for Eric. How much money do you need starting on July 1st of the fiscal year to make sure we can pay everybody until we start collecting our primary sources of income, such as property taxes? What do you like to see the beginning of your start with?
Last time I calculated, it was somewhere between 2 and 2.5 million. So that's why I'm not following what the 4.1, where the 4.1 number, what you're looking at
Page
is.
13.
Page 13.
I think it was the figure before the 3 million contingency, and then add another, you had it in a slide.
The proposed budget maintains the city council's target for year-end balances by recommending an unappropriated balance of $4,201,000 FY 25-26 and contingency of $3 million.
That's unappropriated balance.
Yeah, that's just reflecting what the current budget calculated out at. It's not necessarily a required particular number.
So if you add those two numbers, Eric, on those pages 13, the unappropriated balance of 4,000,002 plus the contingency of 3 puts us to that 7.2 million that I said this budget allows us to have as an ending fund balance.
That's exactly where the ending fund balance number comes from.
Right. I'm working, adding those two.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Hunt?
No, some of the new people, is it understood?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Andrews?
Thank you. I just wanted to say real quick, I would say that I'm just as passionate about parks as anyone here, but because we have the Stevens and actual park staff in the room, that's probably not true. But that said, before joining City Council, I did chair the Parks Advisory Committee. It is something I care about deeply. It is obviously a tough spot to be in with that, sharing the general fund with police and fire. So there will be a little give and take. But I just wanted to, I guess, kind of reassure that we're gonna do our best to make sure that we're making the right call and still keeping Troutdale as unique and comfortable of a place to live as it is. So, Councilor White and I actually went out with Ray just this last week to go visit the Riverfront Trail and the new Sharon Nesbitt Heritage Park. I say that just to say, like, there was a comment made about something Councilor White said, but I mean, we are very excited for all the developments going on in the city. And I just wanted to kind of throw that out there and just let you guys know, like, we have that in mind, so thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
So, just Carol, can I get a clarification then? So earlier you said, I'm on the page 13, that we needed to have 4.1 million in the bank. Is that because we have these two numbers, the contingency of 3,000 and the unappropriated balance of 4,000, or not thousand, but million? What do we need in the bank?
That's what Eric said. We need about $2 to $2.5 million
The
on July 1.
2.5, okay. I just needed the clarification in my head. Thank you.
Okay. So I had thought that you said 4.1 was what we had to maintain to keep our
That's how I interpreted this
solvency.
statement. That was the ending from balance.
That's what we have to have to maintain our
Right,
credit
but
rating.
Eric's saying it's more like 2 million.
Yeah, it's approximately 420,000 a month for the coming fiscal year, and if you assume 5 months before we receive property taxes, it comes in at about 2.1 million for the coming year. But, a larger amount certainly is not a negative by any means. We're not, we've proposed 3 million of contingency. That provides us enough flexibility for whether it's unexpected items or what has been the driver for the 3 million the past several years is what might we have to do with the Urban Renewal Agency, again, between budget cycles. Might we have to advance $1 million to be able to deal with some project attribute? And having that 3 million of contingency provides the city council with flexibility. Doesn't mean that any of it will be spent, because again, it can't be spent unless the council adopts a resolution to do so. Prior to COVID, it was fairly routine that we had about $1 million of contingency. But both COVID and then the more recent things bubbling with the Urban Renewal Agency, we've had it at that higher level.
I have another question, sorry.
That's what I want.
This last week, I have been going back and forth about the 175,000. So can I get an explanation as to why that was there originally? Because I thought it was a savings to the taxpayer, if I'm correct. But is it really a savings to the taxpayer? So
Currently, we take 175,000 of revenue in the general fund, and we transfer it to the debt service fund. So it's an expenditure, it's a cost in the general fund. The money, when it goes into the debt service fund, we use it to lower the amount of what we have to levy for the debt service on this building.
Essentially, we're prepaying part of your bond property taxes, is what we do. We get the money to the county tax assessor, and instead of calculating each year your home spends $60 for that bond for this building, they say, oh, we got prepaid $175,000 from the City of Troutdale's general fund, so we're only gonna charge you $30 next year, because it got bought down by the general fund. That's how you get savings from that.
So the tax bill is basically less.
For the citizens, it's less. Okay.
Mr. Allen?
I can answer a little bit of that. Sorry, we don't talk politics at home. It really helps.
Probably a good idea.
Plus, I don't want to die, so we're. Anyway, so the 175, if I remember correctly, I know that there's others here that were here at the time. There was some controversy on the police and how we were saving money and so forth, and whether we really were, or were we just decreasing service. Anyway, with that said, the thought came up that we should give back to the taxpayers because we weren't using this building for Troutdale Police anymore. We were going to use it for the sheriffs, and that wasn't the original intent. And so the thought was, well, let's give the public part of that savings. And so we would give them the $175,000 as a kickback for helping to reward the public for the savings on the Monona County Sheriff agreement. Well, the problem we're running into is that savings is gone because the original 10-year agreement is ending and we have to do a new agreement and it's going to be more expensive. So there is no more savings that 175 comes out of, which is why I originally voted against the question to pass the budget. That was the only reason I voted against it, because there was a lot of things I saw in the budget that I liked. But I was concerned about the 175 because I'm thinking if we're going to, I mean, like I said earlier, I like things to be smooth. Then if we're going to have to maybe stand up a police and a fire all at the same time, which is a terrible idea, then we're going to need money. And that 175 may come in very useful. So that's why I was kicking back on it. The savings isn't there anymore, and I think we're going to need it. I don't know if I answered your question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Bent?
About that same matter, when this whole thing started with Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, the mayor, the city manager at the time, the mayor at the time, and the city council at the time assured the public in public meetings, and I was at most of them, if not all of them, that the lease payment would be going towards that that GO bond.
Yeah.
They were. I was assured by, I did one-on-ones with them, and they assured me, oh yeah, we're gonna put that money towards that, because the public was very upset, including myself and lots of other people there, that we spent $7.4 million for a new police department. A couple years later, we're getting rid of our own police department. They weren't happy about that.
What you're saying is true, right?
So,
and they were saying that to try to show the public that this was a good idea. My question at the time is what happens when it ends? You know?
but it hasn't ended.
Yes, it is ending.
No, it's not.
It is.
It isn't. Disagree completely.
The 10 years. Can you answer that?
The contract, the
The
contract
contract may
ended.
be ending, but the issue isn't ending.
No. What I mean by ending is that original savings that we had that you get during that first initial negotiation is pretty much gone. Now it's going to be more expensive. Does that make sense? And what happens when it becomes more expensive? That's the problem. That's the problem you run into with contracts sometimes. They're cheap to get into, but they're hard to get out of if they end up not favorable in the long term.
But that's not where that's not where the mayor, the city manager, and the councilors presented it to the citizens. At all, not at all. It did say after 10 years it was gonna be ending.
That was
and you're
a
not gonna get it.
disagreement within council at the time.
I understand, there's only so much we can go back and fix.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly hurt the credibility, the integrity, and everything else of the city council, the mayor, and the city manager.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, their credibility it was very important. It's a principal matter, and
And a
it
lot
was
of
very
people's
important.
credibility was damaged from that process.
Yeah, I will just say, and I've said this to their face in a certain ways. We were sold a bill of goods back in 2015. It was not accurate, not honest for the sheriff of Multnomah County back then to say that citizens could be protected better for 16.5 FTE when we had 28 FTE in the Troutdale Police Department. That was just a misrepresentation, I'll be nice. But the sheriff at that time needed a building because he had none. The Hanson building is falling apart and did fall apart pretty much. He needed a bunch of deputies because his commission was going to close out those positions and he had to fill them with our officers. And so he brought us a sweetheart deal. And now the county, whole different people, it's not their fault, but they're saying, wow, that's not what it costs for the citizens of Troutdale to be protected. And every other city our size I've seen around the whole metro area, yep, they're spending between $5.5 to $6.5 million for police protection or contracts with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. So now we're being faced with the reality of what it really costs. We got a lost leader for 10 years. That was nice and we benefited from because our ending fund balance grew a little bit during that time. But honestly, this is a problem we weren't even aware was going to happen until last fall. But the truth is, we're now being hit with the real cost of providing police coverage when we were given a lost leader for the last 10 years. We really were. So anyway.
And had we really known that, and they've been honest, which as you so applied that they weren't honest in selling us a bill of goods, then it wouldn't have been approved by the citizens. The Multnomah County Sheriff wouldn't, that IGA wouldn't exist. And the contract thing is not over until the GO bond is paid off. That's the end of the contract.
There was a request to put a vote before the citizens, and it was a 4-3 vote, and it didn't pass. So it never went before the citizens.
I'll keep saying this only because he's sitting here, but
the citizens.
Right, yeah, I will say.
Regardless of what the council did, the citizens still believed what they were being told.
Yeah,
And they were still sold the bill of goods.
I have the minutes from all the meetings in March of 2015, if you ever want to read them.
Oh, no.
But I will suck up to my boss, the mayor, right now. He did say, quote, "This seems too good to be true," end quote, back in 2015. But he was on the losing side of a 4-3 vote. And we are where we are today because of that decision. We still would have had a problem financing the Troutdale Police Department back then, but as some of the council members suggest, I even think the mayor might have said it too, or Councilor Allen at the time, we should really ask the citizens to vote for it, and the 4 said no.
Did you have a follow-up statement?
And in addition, the citizens, to me, the citizens, and the response I've gotten from them, and the sale, when people asked about it, and lots of people asked, I live in Sweetbriar, and my son lives in Sandy Palisades, and so we got to meet a lot of people and talk to them. And when that whole thing was transpiring, I assured them, oh yeah, they're gonna lease a building, and that lease payment is gonna go towards paying down that GO bond until that GO bond is paid in full. And those citizens of this city are not gonna be made whole until that GO bond is paid in full, with it being supplemented with $175,000 from the IGA contract lease for that building. Then they will be whole.
Okay. Mayor Rittman?
On the 175,000, I expressed myself at the last meeting, so that I was one that voted for it. I think, and at the end, when Councilor One's proposal for a budget came up, I put it back in. I'm inclined to leave in place the $175,000 payment. It's fairly small compared to the bigger issues we've got with police and fire. And if our credibility is on the line, including mine, I voted for it. I didn't perceive it as a promise. We should have been clearer and said, as long as we're saving money, let's knock $30 off everybody's tax statement and help fund the bond measure, but I didn't, and it didn't even occur to me at the time. So I think the credibility of the council's promise, which several people have mentioned, to continue to use the lease payments for this building to reduce the bond payment, Troutdale voters pay, is perceived as a promise. Hey, we need our credibility as a city and as a council more than we need the 175,000. Okay? In other words, we're going to be coming to the voters asking for a lot more than that. And so my inclination is to leave the 175,000 in as a subsidy for the bond payment in this budget. That's the way I voted at the last meeting, at the end of the meeting, and I still feel that way. And partly it's because I think if it's perceived that we're reneging on a promise, and I don't personally remember how deep, what level of promise it was, but I respect Gene Bent and his memory. He's very good at that sort of thing. If he perceived it as a promise, he's not the only one who's talked to me that way. I feel we need our credibility, and so Carol, you're on the fence, but I guess I'm saying let's leave it in place.
Well, I'm for it, but, going through the budget this week, I'm just thinking, I just kept going back and forth, especially with the new contracts coming. Is it gonna really save money for our citizens with the amount of money we're gonna be paying for police and for fire? Keeping the 175,000, which I think is a great idea, will it still save our citizens like the $30?
It does save that. Each taxpayer is saved $30 or so, I think is how it calculated out. There's just no question about it, and that's money. So I can't deny it. It will save. So if we leave it in, it will save that much money, and if it was a promise that was made, we better keep it.
Thank you for clarity.
As a follow-up to clarify the two different scenarios, to me, it's a principle matter, and I've told many people, and I'm totally in agreement with what you're saying, Mr. Mayor. But I'm A-okay with paying the $15 fee for added on for the utilities to come up with 1.405 million. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
It's a principle, and since the principle was, you told us this, and now you're reneging on it, and now you're gonna come back and say, now we're gonna want another 15 on something else to pay for police?
No, let's not do that.
You don't wanna do that. You really don't wanna do that.
Okay. Mr. Leamy?
So, clarification, it doesn't last as long as the GEO bond does. If we take this police back, it'll end, right, the 175 payment?
Correct.
Because we're no longer leasing.
Correct.
So it's potentially only gonna last 1 or 2 more years.
But we'll have our own police department.
And then, yeah.
Totally different ballgame.
Right.
Because they agreed to the lease bond, for the GO bond, because it was gonna be our own. If you make it our own again 2 years down the road,
Mr. Allen?
then we're okay with that.
Okay.
I'm gonna explain how I look at this, and this isn't really an issue I feel real strongly about, right? But I
Is
just
this the
wanted
175?
the 175. I just wanted
We're
to-
gonna need to I know it's
Yeah.
important, but we're gonna need to figure it out and move on here.
Well, I did want to explain.
Or we're
how I
gonna
look
have
at-
breakfast in the morning.
Yeah. If you look at the 175, it's a pay down of the bond, it's at a fairly low rate. If you look at what does this mean to the households in Troutdale, the people paying the money, what you see is credit card debt levels rising, especially amongst people that are having a harder time making it these days. And so we're giving them money at a lower interest so that they can borrow at a higher interest and make ends meet. And that part doesn't make sense to me. And so that's why I think the way I do. That's okay.
Mr. White?
Yeah. I think it's kind of ironic that Mayor Ripma and Rich Allen and myself were the three that voted to keep our police.
And you're actually still sitting here.
And Dave had to work, but the very next day, Rich and I went down to the county commissioner's office and testified for them not to vote for the deal. It was really probably the most pressure I've ever faced in my life. We were at the Sam Cox building when we voted on the police situation, and the room was full of officers in uniform. So you guys, this is nothing. And then when we went to the county commissioner, it was, I mean, I've never been that nervous in my life, but I felt like I was doing the right thing for the public. So, and it toughened us up, and we're still here, we're still around. So anyway, what I was getting at is I also voted against the lease that night at the Sam Cox building. And I think we can accomplish both things, because I think if we get a fair lease this go around, like a triple net style lease, there'll be extra money. Granted, it'll be short-lived, but I'm comfortable that we can do both. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. All right, does everybody remember what the assignment was? Go back and come back. All right, Mr. Wilcox.
Just on some, before we get into cuts, I have to take a look at the income side of this equation.
Okay.
I heard it writing, it's more than I can remember in one shot. I hit a mic over here so online can hear me. I wanted to shed some additional light on the public safety utility fee. That seems to be lurking in the shadows, waiting to startle residents when they get their July water bill. The proposed $15 per month supplemental utility fee will impact everyone directly. While described as a fee versus a tax, the major difference is that voter approval is not required. Another major difference is that taxes are generally applied as a dollar rate per thousand of assessed value. The fee is regressive in that everyone pays the same, while a local option tax or levy is progressive because it rises in direct proportion to assessed property value. For example, at a levy rate of $1 per thousand, a property assessed at $200,000 would pay $200. Property assessed at $400,000 would pay $400. Using Gresham's figure of $228,000 as an average assessed value, that $15 per month utility fee is equivalent to 79 cents per thousand in a local option tax or levy. Gresham has a $1.35 per thousand levy, which would be an additional $25.65 per month on that average assessed value. Of course, that portion is highly variable because everyone's assessed value is different. The staff's position is that Troutdale residents should expect to pay roughly the same tax burden as Gresham residents for a comparable level of service. Without a levy, Troutdale's supplemental utility fee would need to be about $40 per month. $15 per month is putting a Band-Aid on a severed artery when a tourniquet is needed. While I oppose any form of new fee without voter approval, timing doesn't allow for that. To account for the possible likelihood that the MCSO contract cost will be $800,000 higher than budgeted, that $15 fee should be doubled at least. It might allow for a small surplus available for the following year's increases. Voters should also be offered the opportunity to replace that fee with a levy or to reduce it, or to reduce or eliminate it if they so choose. I also haven't heard anyone mention that with the across-the-board basic utility rate increase of 7%, the overall increase with the public surface utility fee will be 22%. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr.
Just Paul, I just want to make sure I heard you right. You're favoring considering doubling that $15 fee.
We're gonna go with the fee, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not entirely in favor of the fee, but if you're gonna do it,
Yeah.
go big.
All right, interesting.
That is a strategy. Ms. Rizzo?
Yeah, I was gonna propose the same thing, and I was gonna ask if we did increase the utility fee, can we keep our community officer? Resource officer.
That is a possibility, because that is one of the things that we cut already. Okay. Mr. Leamy? Sorry.
In going through this, my thought was to propose $25. I wasn't going 40, but I did think we should probably go higher than 15, and maybe go 25 for a year, and then if we pass on, then we cut it.
Okay. I got 15, I got 25, I got 40. Sorry. Mr. Ben?
Yeah, I think the citizens have a hard time at 15 or 20, or at 25. And one caveat on the 15 that I would mention that I would support, with a caveat that if there's a way within the city budget, I know it goes into the general fund, can you assess it or put it into applicable for police and fire services, so that it's not absorbed.
We can call it whatever you want, Gene.
Do anything you want.
Yeah, I mean, that's primarily why we're assessing it, is because the cost for police and fire have shot through the roof. So that would be an accurate representation to say police and fire fee.
Yeah.
Or whatever word we use for it, absolutely.
Yeah, as long as
And like I said, understand it, for those of you who have read the article that I sent you yesterday, the citizens of Troutdale are underpaying what every other citizen in a city in the metro area or around the state pay for all of these services. So I understand, I pay taxes like everybody else too, but it's a situation where we have been underpaying for a long time, and that's a blessing, but things are changing, and that's why we're exploring these problems.
Okay, just to clarify, we're not paying less than every other city.
Well, Wood Village and Fairview, correct, but they're in the same problem we are.
Right, but I mean, there are cities that pay less than we do, and there's cities that pay more than we do. And there's cities structured all over the place. Some have their own police, some don't, some fire districts, some internal.
Right, but I went through, there's 24 cities in the metro area, and except for the 3 cities, Wood Village, Troutdale, and Fairview, all the other 21 city citizens pay more than we do for these services, all of them. And they have combinations of utility fees, local option levies, or most of them are part of a fire district, which then takes fire right out of the general fund and frees up those funds. So yeah, except for the 3 East County cities, every other city in the metro area, citizens do pay more than we do.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up? No? Okay. Mr. White?
Yeah, Dave and I were at the League of Oregon Cities, and they warned us about comparisons, like that's not the right way to set fees and prices, because every city is so different, so vastly different on their dynamics of their town. It's like, we're blessed being in a low spot of Mount Hood, and we have a high point to put the water towers, things like that other cities don't have, so there's reasons why they might have a much higher rate on certain things.
Just to clarify, that's just general fund, that's not water utility fees or sewer fees, that's just police, fire, parks, community development, that's just that part is what they pay for, so yeah. Yeah, it's nice having a upstairs and a downstairs in Troutdale.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
So I guess to follow up real quick.
Mr. Andrews.
Thank you. How much would the target fee be to cover like a resource officer if that's the case? If we're looking at a $1.405 million add-on with the 15, I mean, in the same breath, you know, I'm hearing obviously like this is something that's not voted for already and you're gonna increase the fee, which can be problematic. There has been talk of, obviously, once a levy is raised, to get rid of the fee as part of that, kind of being part of the deal. I think that's a good idea. The fee in the meantime, if it is already a public service fee, if we're looking at fire and police specifically, I guess we have to ask, I mean, obviously, I think losing the resource officer is a pretty big blow to the community. I think a lot of people feel pretty strongly about it based on what I heard. Given the fact that somebody dedicated to Troutdale, I mean, I think I just saw something come through with, you know, a problematic criminal that was apprehended by our community resource officer. So getting rid of that definitely has its downsides, but I guess the discussion would be how much extra, yes.
Number one, a resource deputy costs $243,000 a year next year. So we need
Same as last year.
Pardon?
Same as last year. I think that was like the budget item.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I'm trying- 247,000 is what they've, a deputy is what costs us, so we added 247,000. By way of example, I just did the math, and if you take a $15 fee and make it $25 fee, the 1.4 million goes up to about 2.3 million. So that provides that much additional income, but, you know, we're probably not going, we're going to be higher than the 4.8 million for Multnomah County Sheriff. It's in the budget, presumably less than the 5.6 million, but then if we add the 247,000 back in, yeah.
And is it possible to contract with community resource officers without an overarching contract, IGA?
Now that we're doing a new contract, we would make that, you know, I'm gonna, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, do you want to take a break before we go through it? You guys want to do that? Okay, let's take a 10-minute break and we'll be back in session at 7:43. Thank you.
But I don't know which it's gonna be until the county does their, until they do their categorization.
Let's go. Come on, guys. Take your seats, please. Take your seats, please.
Hurting cats, Danny, you're hurting cats.
Sit down. Do you need to sit down, please? Jean? Jean?
Yeah, we pretty much relaxed.
Wait till I call the meeting to order and then hit the snap. I've done it twice. If I have to do it again, I'm going home.
Promise?
Come back
Make
Wednesday.
him do it again.
All right. Okay, so now, I don't know that we're in a position to basically treat everything as status quo. I don't think that's possible. Given where we're at and given the expenses that are coming up, and that's just kind of my position on it. I mean, this isn't anything about any one or any department or anything. It's just trying to get from point A to point B. My understanding of where we are is we're looking to try to pass a bond to create a fire district in what, 2 years?
No. We are working with the other two cities in East County. Wood Village has already retained a consultant. We're shooting for May of '26 because we know that in our negotiations with Gresham, which, graciously extended their contract 1 year at a better price than they initially wanted, that gives the cities an opportunity to ask the voters in May of '26. So the voters are going to have a bite of this apple before the next budget in '26-27 is approved.
No. It would go out May of '26.
Correct, and the budget is approved in June by the council.
Okay. The budget would be built, but it would not be approved by the council yet.
Correct.
And we would not make that November's property tax statement, correct?
No, it would.
May would?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it does, because it's effective as of July 1 for the year, and they send the bills out in November for that year that started back on July 1, and if they have the ballot measure before July 1, then they can add it to the property tax statements.
Okay.
That's why I've said before, staff is suggesting next year being a transitional year, and even though our ending fund balance is going to drop from 8.5 to, approximately $7 million, that's still giving us plenty of ending fund balance and a savings account, but it allows us to keep from making any significant cuts in services so that the voters will have a chance to weigh in before we get closer to getting our ending fund balance too low.
Okay. And so we would be down in the just over 6 million range at the end of '26. Fiscal year '26.
No, the budget as currently written has us down to 7.1 million as what's presented to the budget committee.
Right, but then we added the police contract into it and some other things, so our deficit point's 2.1, I believe.
That's if the sheriff's office doesn't budge from their 5.6 million, which we're hoping they are. Again, that's a prospective figure, not a final figure yet.
Okay, so it would put us at 6 million and something.
If the sheriff did not negotiate downward from that position, and if the council only stuck with a $15 fee, if they go to a higher fee, well, of course, that changes all the assumptions there too. That means it doesn't go down to 6 million. So there's still a lot of variables involved. The negotiation with the sheriff's office are not done yet, and the council has not yet made a decision on the police fire fee, which can impact that bottom line ending fund balance. And so it might be good for the committee, Mr. Chair, to more than possible to make suggestions to the council since most of them are here.
For what?
For what the fee might be.
Okay. As far as backfilling it with the fee.
Correct.
Okay.
So that was for the proposed budget, 7.2.
Yeah, the ending fund balance, the proposed budget, ending fund balance will be at 7.2 million at the end of next budget year.
If it's higher sheriff proposal without backing down, as Ray mentioned, 6.1.
Right, worst case scenario.
Likely is somewhere in between.
Right, but given the county, we've got a plan for like 6.1. That one, right?
I don't think
That's
it's.
the higher amount.
That's the highest amount. I don't think we have to
Yeah.
plan for that. I believe it would be less than that.
Less than 4.8?
No, less than 5.6. That 5.6 number on the screen, it will be less than that, I believe. And since, Chair, you were in the committee meeting, we talked about what we're going back with.
Yeah, that's why I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah, but so what you're seeing on the board right now, at the current public safety fee, I would say, that's the worst case scenario for next budget year. If Sheriff's Office doesn't negotiate any longer and you kill the $175,000 fee and you keep the public safety fee at only $15. So again, as I indicated,
Is the other one,
yeah,
that one.
this is the worst case scenario. And,
where we're living.
right, and so I think it sounds like everybody's gonna keep the 175 out of the budget, great. The 5.6, I'm almost sure will be less. But the public safety fee is only 1.4, and if it goes from 15 to 25, that's 2.3. So there's another 900,000, so that puts you back up to 7 again. Over 7.
So that's, at 15. So that's at 15. That's at 25, so 2.3.
I'm very impressed, Eric. You already have these examples to show them. I like it.
Which is what I've been clicking away on over here while you guys have been talking.
Is he good or what?
2.8.
And that's it at 30, 2.8. You know, those are the three amounts that I heard bantied about.
Actually, it was 40.
Yeah,
He'll get going again.
Yeah,
But
let's-
you can just do the math.
let that go at this point.
Take 1/3 of that and add it to 2.8.
Okay, and I'll bring this up because it was brought up to me, is we do have to consider what the optics look like. Obviously, there's not a lot to cut out of the general fund, but I'm not a counselor, and but I do think it's a situation where this fire district is gonna have to pass, or we're gonna be in a really tough spot. All I can tell you is, the last bond I did was this building, and it was really difficult. Really difficult. It might be easier now, it might be harder now, I don't know. Just what,
Even if Troutdale passed it, we need Wood Village and Fairview to pass it?
Nope,
No.
nope.
Okay.
We can join a fire district on our own.
All right.
Mr. Matt?
What's the possibility, Ray, of getting that, the information so you could vote on it in November this year?
I'll talk to them. It's just the consultant says they have to do a lot of legwork to start doing, a lot of, surveying, of polling of people and what message works best to communicate to them. And even though I've written, 3 articles in the Champion in the last year, and as you saw, I emailed you another one that's gonna go out next month's Champion. It's gonna take more than that. It's gonna take, public meetings, neighborhood meetings and things like that to communicate to the people the why, wherefore, and what you're gonna get for it. So they just wanna make sure if you're gonna do it and spend the time and money to doing it, you wanna make sure you take your best shot at it. Then trying to rush one to November and then lose. There's also strategies involved. Last summer, we had the Public Safety Working Group, had the consultants come talk to us about a little bit of that, and you kind of plan for which one of the elections are more likely to pass. And there's just all that science, that social science involved, Gene, that it's just, they're not suggesting we move that quickly. And Wood Village, honestly, is harder up than we are. They cannot pass a police fire fee. Their council cannot. Their charter is written such that any new fees or taxes must be voted on by the voters. So they're going to be harder to balance their budget next year than we are in Wood Village.
And by November, or now you're saying actually May, you would have a solid figure for the tax?
Oh, yes, that would all be in the materials to go out to the citizens, exactly what it would cost, what you would get.
And that can be done by May?
Yes.
Because I think that to me should be the focus, is to get to work on the fire IGA and get it to a fire district. And if I'm not mistaken by our conversation of the other day, that the funding that would be generated would certainly be able to a large degree, populate our own police department.
Right, and that's the goal. We already have a consultant study as to, how to do that. The mayor and I have talked about hiring a consultant to start the preliminary planning for bringing in our own police department. It takes a year to 2, 1 to 2 years to create that police department. in terms of hiring and training, all that stuff. And so we would need that time to do it, so.
And if we did the fire first, though, it would generate the income to be able to do that stuff.
Correct, and we'd still be in contract with Multnomah County Sheriff, because I think right now we're looking at a 3-year contract. That's been the strategy, Mr. Benz, is that we get to the voters in May of 26 and hopes that they approve a fire district. Then that frees up in the next 2 budget years that additional income that we're not paying to the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office for the last 2 years of the contract, and then we have 2 years of cushion to be able to hire our own police department. At least that's the plan. And what I'm hoping to have, and I've already said this to our search firm for my replacement, that's going to be one of the key qualities we should be looking for in the next city manager, someone who has experience about getting bond measures passed and understands, because that's going to be his job number 1 in his first year on the job, or she. We're very mindful of that. And we're very mindful, as Tanny said, that it's not easy. But then again, if you look around the metro area, the citizens in all those other cities, they've passed local option levies or they've voted to join a fire district because they understand the value in that and freeing up money in the general fund for additional services that, like the police department.
Well, whoever they select, I think your tutelage will direct them down the right road.
I want to leave a good place, and this is why I will yell and scream it here if people want to cut staff, because when you cut staff to solve this problem for 1 year, staff gets discouraged to stay. People don't want to come work at a city where they're cutting their budgets and they're not feeling supported, and it gets harder to replace those people. And so I don't want to start that cascade. I want to give the new city manager and our citizens a chance to say, hey, we like what we got in Troutdale. We're willing to pay more to keep it. And so that's kind of what the staff's suggestion is in terms of how we should proceed. Sorry.
No, that's great. That's the suggestion, but you don't get to vote.
I'm not saying I do.
Mr. Allen?
So I want to bring to your attention, and this is partially why I brought it last time. Should the votes fail, right? We have to be prepared to stand up for our own fire and police, right? You just don't know what's going to happen. So as a contingency, we should be prepared. Now, I'm not suggesting drastic cuts or anything like that. I don't think we're that far into it, but we should be prepared. So I bring you back to the 2000 election, and this is Rittman's earlier days. You might remember that. Measure 2624. So this was a tax levy for fire and police. And the yeses were 1,700 and change, and the noes were 3,600 and change. So it went down. I'm just saying, you gotta have a contingency of standing up your home just in case things don't go the way we need them to.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could comment. Yeah, I have those results and I've seen them, but we have to remember back in 1999, 2000, that was right after the big property tax revolt. That's when they passed Measure 5 and 50, when all of the people who were on the bandstand cheering for reducing property taxes back then were alive, and Gresham in 2004 also had a vote to join the fire district, and it went down significantly too. But again, all the same players that pushed Measure 5 and 50 was fresh. But as you recall from the presentation to the 3 cities meeting last week, the problem now has multiplied by many factors since then. It wasn't as bad back then as it is now, so it becomes much more acute. So you're right, that happened, but it was a little different environment.
I think you're in the right path. I just always love plan B.
Yeah, I know, I found that vote.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilcox?
I think Ray has the number that Shane's asking for, don't you? Clackamas is 292.
If we join,
Changes, is it?
Clackamas is a 240 permanent tax rate, and their citizens approved a 5-year operating levy of 52 cents, which I think has 2 or 3 more years left on it. And so that additional amount is left up to the voters to renew every 5 years. And presumably, if we join that fire district, we'd get a vote next time on it. Fire District 10 has a permanent tax rate, I think like 280, theirs is higher. So if the citizens voted to, I don't know what the options are gonna be on the vote, but those are things we have to work out with the other cities in East County. But they're 280 at Fire District 10, I believe.
I think we're assuming 292.
It never hurts to assume the worst.
Okay. All right, anyone else? Okay, so, and I agree, you don't want to cut staff, okay? But to answer your question, would we be able to stand up a police and fire department if the bond failed? Eric can probably answer this. I don't believe we would have the financial capacity to do that.
That's your belief, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Who am I to disagree with your belief?
More passing the buck.
If you're asking my opinion, there's no chance in hell.
Okay. Well,
Right, and
that's a little stronger answer.
Right, but that is why we have a positive message to our citizens if we ask to join a fire district, because you'll get the Troutdale Police Department back. And if they vote no, then they don't. It's let the citizens decide if they want to pay more to get more.
Okay, and so what I heard tonight was we're doing a 3-year contract with Multnomah County Sheriff.
We have not signed anything yet. That's what our discussions with the county have been, that we've kind of mutually agreed in principle that that's probably what we should be looking for, because I don't think the sheriff's office wants to continue it past that anyway. And I think our citizens, from what I've always heard of this group and other groups, is the citizens would love to have a shot at having the Troutdale Police Department back.
Okay.
But we can't predict the future. We can't predict the election. All we're trying to do tonight, and what the staff is suggesting, is approve next year's budget. That's the one thing we can control tonight, is what next year's budget is.
Mr. Warren.
So from my understanding, we're still at the end of this budget that you guys have proposed. We're gonna have $7.2 million ending fund balance, which is down a little bit from last year. And it could be more, it could be a little bit less. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I proposed a motion last time and to approve this budget with a couple of changes. And I did that based on the fact that I don't personally feel that changing this budget and eliminating departments or jobs or people or projects that are important to this is needed right now. What we're looking at is we have the money to do what we've done. We've planned from previous years because we knew this point was coming. That's why we have a pretty decent ending fund balance. And we could make this work for the next 2 to 3 years. We are going to have additional revenue sources. Okay? And if that's that public utility fee, whatever price it is, whatever we decide as a council, that's what we're responsible for. If the people decide that they do not want to pay more taxes, they do not want a fire district, or they do not want a levy to reestablish our police department, that is the will of the people. At that point, horrible decisions are going to have to be made, because we will not have enough money to support everything that we do in the city right now. It's just not feasible. I mean, Eric, I'll say a little more eloquently, like, we're going to have to make hard decisions. No one will like. Nobody. I wouldn't like to do that. And so, but I also don't think that we just assume that's what's going to happen. My personal feeling, just like the pulse of the room, is that we need to cut millions of dollars off this because of something that could possibly happen 3 years from now. And I think that people want to live their lives. People want to go to the parks. Like, that's what we've heard. I heard on Zoom before I got here, wonderful explanations of how great the parks are. I use the park almost every single day. Our parks department, there was a great comment that we got sent to us. What all parks employees do and how valuable they are to our community. And so parks happens to fall in a general fund, that's where we need money. And so I think that was like the word that was thrown out, which if it comes to that, maybe that's what has to happen 2 years from now, but that's the will of the people, not a group of 7 or a group of 14 making that. We've sent that to everybody and let them make that decision. I think that after that decision is made, if we passed it, great. What we can continue to do fantastic things in the city, provide festivals and bazaars and First Fridays and have great parks, maybe even better parks. We can have our own police force that we can ask them what we want to do with that. But if the answer is no, then the people need to know that there's gonna be hard decisions made at that point. I don't think we need to make those hard decisions today. There's no reason to. That's my personal feeling. And so I think staff has shown us a great, they've made the most cuts they possibly can. We have still a pretty good ending fund balance that I feel good with. And so, you know, if we feel like we need to cut $100, $200 more $1,000, I'm really interested to hear like where we all want to cut that from. But the end of the story is that we have a good ending fund balance. We have a plan of what we're going to direct staff to do, which is go for a fire district. We discussed it at the 3 Cities meeting. The 3 cities are in conjunction with that, and I think that again, I'm just interested to hear what people want to cut to make this budget pass, and why we want to do that. Because, like I said, staff I think has done a great job, and we have a plan for the future. And again, that they're going to come to a fork in the road at that point. And at that point, you have to make hard decisions, and we're going to have to figure out what to do. But that's the greater people get to make that decision.
Okay, so I guess my pushback would be, should we at the meantime be trying to balance our expenses to our revenues?
I don't think we can. Like we've worked really hard on these police and fire contracts, and we know that those costs went up significantly from what we were paying. And I think it's really important for people to know that we were getting a great deal to where we didn't have to have a fire district. You know, we went all these years without having to increase our tax rate, a fire district, a levy, or whatever that is, like the other cities around us have, to provide those services. And that's awesome. That's why people live here, and I get that, and I appreciate that. But the reality is that our revenue is not keeping up with our expenses, because everything's gotten so expensive that this can't keep up to that, what we need to spend. What do we do? We have options to do that. The people need to vote on that. We're going to give them that vote. You know, it's just like if I want a truck, right? I gotta save for that truck, or I gotta take what I can get. And if I just take what I can get, or I can save for a couple years to get the nicer truck, it's on me to make those decisions. It's just the same thing. Like, you wanna have nice things, we have to pay for them. And whereas I appreciate people who are living here, they love their tax rate, and maybe that's why you don't want to live in a different city. But the reality is that our revenues aren't keeping up with our expenses because things are becoming so expensive, and we've all felt that. So I feel like to me, it's pretty cut and dry.
I think there's just some people out there that probably can't afford their property taxes to go up 17%.
Yeah, I hear that. So then, a few people then should, you know, I can't not support it because of a few people. When this is what's best for the whole city, and I have to do what's best for the whole city. That's why I'm here. So what's best for the whole city is to do this. And while I appreciate and I sympathize with people who can't afford that extra $280 on their taxes or whatever the rate ends up being, there are programs out there. The city has helped people in the past. They'll continue to help them in the future figure those things out. And if someone has to move, I mean, I don't want people to move. I don't want them to have to do that. It's not what people want to do. But the reality is for the city to function like how it's been functioning, we have to increase our revenue. But the case at hand is like, we have a good ending fund balance. We have a good budget in front of us, I feel. And so I want to hear what people want to cut from this to make it better in their eyes, and I'm interested to hear what those are.
Okay, Mr. Allen.
I got a pretty good feel for the room, except for at some point I'd like to hear from committee member Timmerman and Councilor Andrews. Just if you can help me with understanding this. When you feel like chiming in, it'd be nice to know.
Well, I will speak for myself. $15 a month is a lot for me. And that's just my reality. And I don't want to move out of Troutdale because I can't afford to live here. This is where I've raised my children. This is where I work. I enjoy our parks. I love everyone in this city. I appreciate everything that everyone is doing. You're willing to serve here. This is our third night. You're willing to do the hard work. We have to make hard decisions. And I don't think kicking them down the road a couple years is fair to our citizens. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to my children. I don't know how we're supposed to be, I don't want to be taxed out of my community where I live. I love it here. I love the parks here. Fire service is very important to me. I work for a fire agency. It's very important to me. It was very important to me on Saturday night when there was a fire on Hensley to know that whoever was there, and there was a man that had to go to the hospital. It's very important to me that we have police. I've had to use their services. It's not the best. It's something that we have. Our water, sewer, streets, everything is important. And I agree with Chair Stephenson. Everything in here is important. Everything has value, and everything is, somebody is passionate about something in here. I have to manage my own budget at home, and if I can't afford it, I can't afford it. And I'm not gonna go out and spend, I'm gonna save for 5 years to get my new truck. Unless I can't, then I'm gonna have to make do with what I have. I do also think that, love recreation, I love our community events. I believe that government's job is not to provide for and necessarily all of those recreational opportunities. I believe we have citizens in this city who are passionate about those things, and they, with civic organizations, churches, they can fill those roles for us and work as partners with the city. That we are maybe taking opportunities away from our citizens to become civically engaged here. People that are passionate about their arts, I'm sure they would be happy to put on the arts festival. You have people that we have so much to offer, and when government steps in to do things that is not really their charge, then we're robbing our people of their contribution to where we live. Because we all have a responsibility to contribute to where we live. When I'm taking a walk, I pick up garbage, so my people don't have to pick up garbage. So that's kind of where I stand.
Mr. Brandt?
Yeah, in response to what Heidi's saying, and also Councilor One, the people such as Heidi, myself, I've been in the city for 35 years. We are essentially, for lack of better words, the roots or the foundation of this community, since we've been here so long. And the people that would possibly have to move or be hurt worse are the foundation or roots of this city. When you're saying that you have to represent the majority versus the minority, you would be hurting people like her and me and all the other people who've been here, Paul, for a long time. Those people might have to move as a result of what you're saying. And I ask you might want to reconsider or think about that and the impact it would have on those people. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? We can move this.
I just want to add, everybody's going to be adversely impacted to a certain degree. Some people are going to be adversely impacted because they're going to have to pay more money that maybe they can't afford. But then there's a whole group of people on the other side that are gonna be adversely impacted because they don't have the same services they've come to enjoy. I agree with Heidi 100%. You know, government should be doing what government does best and leave private things to private people. As an example is our community events. We have worked really hard over the last couple of years to keep ourselves from supporting things like, you know, the car show and things like that, and only doing certain community events that we do pay for in your budget. But if you go to movies in the park in July and you see 500 of your fellow residents go to that park and watch movies in the park, it's a great, fun, free, but they do pay taxes for it, event. And you know the parks you talk about, and if you can't finance that stuff, well, then they're gonna lose something also. It may not be financial, but they're gonna lose an experience in Troutdale. So any way you go, your people are gonna be adversely impacted, whether it's their pocketbook or their lifestyles. None of it's any fun, but that's what you're deciding between. It's not an end-sum game where we can't let anybody, you know, suffer on the financial side, because then you make other people suffer on the community living quality of life side. So it's a give and take in all this. That's what you're being asked to do, is figure those out.
Mr. Laney?
I somewhat agree with Jeffrey on a lot of the things that he said. A couple of clarifications that I'd like is, we have in here one FTE that we want to hire. But it's my understanding that we hired this person a person for that position 2 years ago. So I'm wondering what happened with that person, and why are we hiring somebody? That was
Correct. Since those 2 years ago, we have had another employee in that department get another 2 years older and closer to retirement. I know they're making plans for retirement, where they're gonna go to and things like that. And so I've talked to Public Works, at least somebody over there, maybe Travis, and we've talked that in the internal, well, let me back up. The Internal Services Division is one of those employees. They're the ones that maintain everything in the city, from the trucks to the sewage treatment plant control systems to the pump systems. I mean, it's a very complicated job. And two of those 3 employees we have in that department currently are not gonna be here in likely 2 to 4 years. They're just not gonna be here. And they have people who've been worked here for 30 and 40 years. And the idea is to hire somebody now to start learning from those 2, so that over the next year or 2, when those other people leave, they will be brought up to speed on all our internal systems. And the idea is that in 2 or 3 years when that happens, we want 4 next year, but then 2 or 3 years, when we lose those 2, we'll cut it back to 3. Is that what we, yes, Travis is going, yes, that's what we talked about. So this additional position is I'll just say it's a 2-year position, so that we can make that transition over, because there's not many organizations that are gonna lose 2 of the most experienced and knowledgeable maintenance people that run so much stuff in this place. And so we're trying to adjust for that because we want good quality service. And I know it's a person, I know optics, but it doesn't come out of the general fund. It's a different fund. So that's why, good catch, John.
Okay. And then the other question, being on the city council and that we will be voting on this, I'd like to get some feedback as to what the safety, what did we call that, $15?
We'll call it the police and fire fee. We gotta make sure it's clear why we're doing it.
The police and fire fee, get some feedback from everybody at what level you would like us to consider. I mean, I think that's a number that we're gonna need to know before we can pass a budget, is what that number's gonna be. I'd like to know.
Mr. Redmond?
I'm not sure we need to know. I mean, it's budgeted for $15. And we can pass a budget like that and then establish the fee at city council.
But if it goes to 25, then we don't have to cut someplace else.
Right, we could budget it at 25, but I think the budget it's written at 15 is prudent. But also, John, I guess my feeling is that we don't want our hands tied to a higher figure in advance. I don't know, it's just, I'm a little worried about that, but it's just a feeling.
Well, I'm just wondering if the consensus is that we should keep it at 15 or?
Well, I have to admit, I was surprised to hear some people suggesting, including you and Paul, and perhaps, and I've talked to Victoria about this, make it a higher fee. I was gulping at passing the $15 one, but a higher one would do more good, I think. For the city, maybe we could sell it on the basis of bringing back a resource officer, something like that, but that just came up today, I hadn't really thought it through. I'm not objecting to people weighing in on it if anybody else wants to increase the fee, but we don't, I don't think on the council we want to be bound by the budget committees. The budget committee, if we pass the proposed budget, it's 15.
Right.
We could do a higher fee without a problem.
Okay.
Mr.
But
Mayor? Politically, of course.
Were you done, John?
But potentially we need to cut more out of this budget based on what we're doing over there.
Well,
So
or
my
not,
thought was-
obviously, at the last meeting, I supported Councilor One's motion and thought we were home. Boy, was I outvoted, so I've learned my lesson.
Mr. Matt?
Yeah, I think you'd be real hard pressed for the average citizen to eat $300 a year plus 7% rate increase. I think you would have a lot of flack. I mean, a lot of flack. That's a lot of money all at once.
Well, to bring a resource officer back on board might be, I don't know if that's not persuasive to you. I think that seems like.
I'm not against it.
There's the other state, as Mr. Wilcox told me earlier today, and I just looked it up, confirmed it, Jacksonville, Oregon, $79 a month for public safety fee. So we're gonna be way under that no matter what you get. With the staff just doing 15, because that's what our neighbors to the west, Gresham, their citizens pay. And it's part of our working with City Gresham about, paying the increase in fire is that Gresham says that's what we asked our citizens to pay more because it costs us more for fire. How come you're not asking your citizens to pay more? It's not an unreasonable argument. So anyway.
Jacksonville is built on Gold Hill, right?
Dang.
In case you didn't know that.
No, Corvallis is at 45.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, crap.
So a couple of things, I guess a loaded question for you is if we did move to Clackamas Fire initially, that would be like almost a $2 million increase? Was the information that I saw that you guys got at the Three Cities meeting that was held in Wood Village about 3 weeks ago?
Well, what would happen is if we join Fire District 1, let's just say that, or Fire District 10, because they're close, doesn't matter. If you join a fire district, come July 1 of 2026, we will not have to pay the city of Gresham the $3.2 million we're paying next year.
Right, but I'm saying if we changed prior to a fire district happening. We have a 1-year agreement with Gresham.
Right.
Okay, what if we needed to switch to Clackamas in the interim? That would be more money.
Yeah, there's so many variables between now and then, Tanny, I can't tell you because the citizens get to vote. It's what happens with Fire District 1, what happens with the city of Gresham in the next year. If they choose to go to a fire district, it creates a different problem for us. So there are so many variables, I don't even want to go down that game at this point.
Okay. And I understand, I think this is a good budget. I just see us dropping in reserves fairly rapidly and to a point where if something does happen, what would we do? And I don't know what the answer is to that.
Well, I think Councilor One said it. If we get to that point, citizens don't approve the budget, well then, big things come off the budget. That's the only way to do it, because that's our only alternative. In any budget problem, guys, we all know, either you have to increase income or cut spending. Okay. What we're planning for is our budget is that we're gonna ask the citizens to increase spending. If they don't, then the alternative is what we'll have to do, and then it makes the decision easier for you in the 26-27 budget.
I don't know that it ever makes the decision easy.
No, but it makes it more obvious.
And the last comment that I would make is that we cut police service because we said we couldn't afford it, okay? And this was the thing that I've asked on both nights. Is there something out there that we are doing this year that can wait till next year? Or possibly the year after? Does everything have to be done this year?
Well, what we said, we could cut the 175 out of the Beaver Creek Bridge, because we know we won't, it just won't get done in time to spend that kind of money. Parks, it says lop off the $50,000 for the Imagination Station surface. It's better not to spend that, because we're gonna have to redo the whole surface in a couple of years anyway, or we should be doing it now, but it's waiting for a couple of years. We cut $50,000, we said you could cut out of the legal budget from 240 to 190. We could cut the city manager salary budget line item now from 260. I better check but we could cut it from 226 to 210.
But Eric said we.
But Eric, but you're gonna have that money potentially for.
Because we stopped paying you.
Right, you may overlap me, or you may not, I don't know. But that's only 16,000, but those are the big ones that we talked about last meeting.
Right.
That could be cut, and.
I'm just saying, is there something else?
Oh, I went through the budget, guys, honestly, a sheet of paper, I could find another 100,000, okay, how do I say this right? When we created a budget, generally, we create a cushion in all the line items, because we just don't know what we're gonna spend next year, and as you know, the rule of municipal budgeting is, if you don't budget it, you can't spend it. But we always spend less than those budget line items, because we respect your money, and the staff is great at that. And then last year, the budget, you all asked us to cut a bunch out of it. So I went back through and I started squeezing all our line items, and in addition to the skate park, we found stupid phrase, we found $700,000 that we could start condensing that cushion and those budgets down to what we really think we're gonna spend. So we've already squeezed that out of it. I looked through it again, I've talked to some people and stuff, I could find, in addition to what I just listed for you, I could find another $100,000 in line items, because like I said, we already got rid of that cushion for this year, and I might be able to wring another $100,000 out of it, without impacting the services that our citizens are getting now.
I'm just saying, everything that we're doing, we have to do this year.
Right, and I will just tell you, based on how we spend things though, that 100,000 that I would cut out of your budget that you would approve, probably won't affect spending at all next year, because a lot of those budget line items, our staff would probably spend under it anyway.
But as everyone knows.
But it would show up as a savings.
We cannot consider that, we can only consider appropriations.
Right, that's what I'm saying is, even though it will show you a savings of $100,000, which is that number, on the proposed budget. But even if you hadn't have done that, you're probably gonna get that savings anyway and reduce spending over budgeting. But if it helps the budget pass, which I understand that, you know, I find my sheet of paper here somewhere. If that matters, I mean, there's no motion on the floor, I don't know.
There isn't on it.
So.
What's your magic seed paper?
I'm just looking at it. Because I tried to anticipate the needs of my people as best I can. But when just looking.
I don't want to go through it.
No, that's why I sent a list, so we don't have to go through it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's approximately $125,000.
Okay.
That I have a list in front of me here that I could reduce line items to save another $125,000. In addition to the list we already discussed. So
yes.
For every 100,000 raised finding, you raise the utility fee by $1, that compensates. But he may still need for that cut.
If I raise the utility fee?
$5.
Yes.
Police and fire fee.
Is that what you're proposing?
I'm just saying that's an option.
Well, there's always options. Getting recalled is an option too, but I don't like it. You know, like I said, I just asked the question, is there something that we can delay because we've been cutting in critical service areas? That's all. And if the answer is absolutely not, then I understand that.
Well, do you have anything, Tammy? You must have, you have something in mind?
I have some things that were suggested, that's all I have. Mr. White.
You know, I think for starters, we should include the money for our resource officer, because I don't think we can do without that person. And, I asked Ray the question in December, are we gonna hire anybody this budget cycle? And he said no. So I took him at his word on that. I'd rather not hire somebody so we don't have to lay off that resource officer. And hopefully there's some redundancy in that department. And I think you guys are gonna get the lower level position, and the people that are, again, this is a blind decision because I'm not in that department, I don't know. But I think in a good management situation, you would already have someone ready to take the place of the senior folks.
We're working on, but again, it's apples and oranges. The money that you save by not hiring somebody in Public Works does not give us one dime more to hire a resource deputy, because they're different accounts.
Utility fee for police and fire, a 7% water increase, a new levy fee, and then we get people are struggling with their bills that they currently have. 18% inflation. I don't think the private sector got anywhere near that kind of an increase to cover that. And I could go on.
Well, I was just saying the levy fee is you're not going to have a levy fee. That's already included in this budget. But it's not going to be an extra fee.
It's going to be an extra fee to the consumer.
No, well, it's being paid out of the budget that you've been presented. You're not going to get it on your utility bill.
When will that happen?
But Eric,
It happened a year ago.
a year ago, it's been being paid, and it hasn't touched it won't ever touch your utility bill.
Or the utility fund?
It's got a utility bill.
Stormwater.
Because it's a stormwater fee, and so that's just part of you know.
That's the first time I've
Yeah.
brought this up
Then you
before,
didn't
and that's
even
the first
notice that
time
we're
I've-
doing it, did you?
Well, I've noticed everything else, and I'm not alone.
Yeah.
You know, to say you can just move, you know, I'm not gonna move any of my grandchildren behind and my kids. I mean, it's really callous to even suggest that, but we learned that 40% of our residents are mortgage burdened, and even more are rent burdened currently. So it's like, I don't think the levy's gonna pass myself. I hope I'm wrong. But, we have to be prepared for that, and we could get a jump start on it now if we look at some cuts.
Like what? Yeah, that's what I asked. Like, there's some cut, and it has to be from the general fund, like we have to cut from the general
I
fund.
think we can bring, well, I'm looking at adding to the budget by bringing back our resource officer, it's important. So in lieu of that, I'd rather not hire this year the two positions that we were told that I was expecting no new hires.
Yeah,
I was around in 08 when we.
But like I said, they're the completely different budgets. One doesn't affect the other. We can't use the money we save from not hiring those two positions to hire a resource deputy. You can't do that. That's against state law. So I understand your concerns, you know, in the optics and stuff, but it doesn't free us any money. I'd love it to have it too.
No, the only point would be it's a decrease in expense.
Yeah, in siloed accounts, in other siloed accounts, yeah.
You know, and it's fine, as it was put to me, it's tough when you're cutting police and you're adding.
I mean, would it get the budget approved if my staff had to make the tough decision of not hiring one of those two? I'm just trying to think of ways that, you know, get this budget passed and move forward.
All all for me, I'm just saying, if the point is, we absolutely cannot live without it, and that's why we're going down to one officer, then I can explain that to people. I can, I mean,
it's
if
just like
that's,
we talked about, like, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. We can't wanna add things when we wanna take them away, when we're talking about taking things away. So, you say you want a resource officer, that's great, then we need to increase the fee that we're charging, which
Right.
obviously affects everybody at this table, and we don't wanna do that, we're trying to take things away. So I wanna hear what people want to take away from the general fund that seems reasonable to get this budget passed. That's what I'm asking, but I haven't heard anything.
right,
so-
but and the general fund's a factor, but it's the entire $80 million budget that we're charged with reviewing, right?
I know, but we have decided that the general fund is what is kind of a hang-up, right? It doesn't matter, like, because we're talking about police and fire services, that's what we need to pay for. That's where we have this ending fund balance. That was then, in my mind, the main discussion. Public safety is very important to us, and so those are our main focuses of things to keep. So what else out of the general fund can we cut that would make people feel more comfortable with a bigger ending fund balance? Or the council can approve, and this would be a $50 utility fee, so you could have everything you want, right? Which sucks, like, that's a lot of money for me, that's everybody in here. I thought it was a lot when I suggested, that you do 15, like, that's a burden. But we need it to make sure the functioning parts of the city can function, people can get public safety. So what do we want to cut out of the general fund, or what are some suggestions and why to make this budget be passed? I feel like that's the question in front of us, and I haven't heard anything to cut we've added, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do.
Mr. Young?
I'm just throwing suggestions out there for everyone, depending on, they'll get you to some location. I mean, you could have a motion that directs the city manager to reduce the general fund expenses, $134,000, plus the $50,000 for the Magic Station, plus $175,000 for Beaver Creek, plus $50,000 for legal. And then we add back in the $175,000. If we're not gonna do that to reduce it and pay for the citizens, we're gonna leave that in for them. Then we get ourselves down to about, I think about a $240,000 positive in the budget. And then if you recommend a $25 public police and fire fee, that's another roughly $900,000. That's overall about a $1.1 million improvement in the bottom line of the budget, which is most of that ending fund balance that we're losing, without knowing what the sheriff's contract is gonna be, but it gives you back on this budget $1.1 million if those things occur. That's just a suggestion to get you cutting a bunch of stuff, but also increasing the fee, because in the long run, the fee is gonna be cheaper than the fire district that they approve anyway. So maybe it's an adjustment that people want to consider. Anyway, that's just an offer to an idea that could get you $1.1 million to the positive in the proposed budget.
But that really won't get us there, because we know that the police contract is not gonna be $4.7 million.
Oh, absolutely, but it gets you closer than we were before I made the suggestion. We're never gonna solve the problem with those things because the problem is too big this year. So, anyway, that's the suggestions.
Ms. Timmerman?
I have a question, page 53, professional services. There's the citywide energy efficiency study with a note that says if it's grant funded.
Right,
Has it been funded?
right, we have, if you look at the income is listed to match that number. So that's a net zero on the ending fund balance of the general fund, because we don't put anything in as an expense that's gonna be grant funded without also putting in income the same amount, so that we don't screw up the budget. But we can't spend it for that study, even if we got the money, if it's not listed.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Good, I asked the same thing when I'm looking at it, Heidi. Show me where the income is. And Eric showed me where the income was.
I asked Eric that about the 550 for the Beaver Creek Bridge.
Yeah.
And he showed me where it was, the grant funding. There's a
Give
grant-
other people a chance first.
That's okay. Well, you had your hand up, so I gotta do these in order.
Yeah, I'm good. Somebody else wants it.
Okay. Okay. So that's what I'm understanding, is we are focusing on the general fund, if possible, and we don't have anything that we can cut. I just want to be clear about that.
You said you had some suggested cuts.
Some things that were suggested, you know, there's a number of them, and I don't even know the answer to these. I'll probably get the answer just in facial expressions. But a couple of them that were suggested were the community development roof replacement. And did we need to spend $104,000 on computers as a whole when we spent $90,000 this year? Another one is
Page what page?
several of these are on 19, 20, and 21.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then of course, the one that people have talked about quite a bit is the office remodel. And I know that's not out of the general fund.
Is that on page?
That's on
That's on
20,
20.
20? Okay. Thank you.
but it's like we're doing a lot of rehab work when we're saying that we're broke. Mr. Andrews?
Yeah, the roof was my suggestion earlier. I mean, I think that through the total that I was kind of looking at, literally just trying to scrap it, came up with like roughly 80,000. But honestly, if Ray has,
I got 134 I can tweak
if you
out.
have a better idea, obviously, like I'm kind of shooting in the dark based on essentially what we're looking at for what might not necessarily need to be done this next year. You have a good idea of that, obviously running staff. If you have a good number there, I would be comfortable moving forward with some slight cuts, just to kind of round it off, like we're saying. I mean, you're talking about adding another resource deputy. If we do that, the fund would need to go up. I mean, a good go-between might be like a $20 fee, because that would essentially cover that cost if that's the case. But realistically, we can't do without a fee addition. I mean, everything points to that based on like just even barely scraping by. It's kind of unheard of, not as in the general state, even not to have any kind of fee attached with funding. You know, fire, police, parks in some cases. I mean, most people have fees and levies attached. I don't think what we're asking is outlandish, given what we are kind of up against, without having to go kind of, you know, full nuclear before we have to. But I think if we kind of put that back in the court when it's essentially just making cuts by staff to kind of cover the distance there, shooting for like that number of like 100,000, that, you know, even a little bit less than what Ray was saying, just to kind of give a little flexibility. I think they would know best what the line items are at this point. But that was just to cover the options, excuse me, that I did put in there just so we can talk about it. CD roof replacement was a possibility. Replacing old computers was one, where even if we reduce it by a little bit to give contingency for anything that goes out of service. Again, to me, that's kind of what we would be able to dip into contingency for if we are running short on supplies. In that case, if something breaks, if something is out, that's what we would be able to approve and move that into usage for. You know, those are like the two biggest line items. There's small things here and there, but again, just to kind of get into the nitty gritty, I think kind of defeats the purpose to a certain extent based on kind of the, I guess, taking into account the morale and everything of the staff and city and everything else incorporated. But, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know.
All right, if the chair's good, no, you're good.
Yeah, it kind of sounds to me, if these are the kind of cuts we're talking about, we're really looking at a pretty good budget from what we voted on, last time we had met. And the only reason I voted no last time, I already told you, was 175, I wish that was reconsidered. It's less than 1% of my property tax bill. That's 175 means more to me in the budget than it means to me on my tax bill. It's just too small a figure on my tax bill. But it sounds to me like it's a good budget as is, and staff is responsible and conservative. So I'm good with the changes that were made last time. And the reason why I'm saying that is when we start getting into things like the computers and stuff like that, you're not saving a lot of money on percentage points. And I gotta tell you, being a guy that likes cyber wars, this last year has been horrible as far as attacks go. It used to be individuals, then it became groups that attacked you, now it's countries that attack you. It's not a good thing to be trying to save money there, because it's ugly out there, and older equipment's more vulnerable. It just, yeah, I guess I'm saying what we voted on last time isn't looking so bad to me.
Okay, thank you. I agree with you, but I also think, we've just got to be ready to take the full brunt if it doesn't go well. And that's not a scare tactic, that's just how it is. And it's not something we get to lay back in the citizens' lap either.
I'm open to good suggestions, I just want to be good stewards of what we have. I sometimes overinvest, it's a personality flaw, and when things get tight for us, we tend to just watch what we spend on and make better decisions. Like, we're not gonna forego changing oil just to save money on an oil change. 'Cause
Right.
then you're messing up your car. And so when we start talking about not replacing old computers and not fixing a roof, that kind of stuff catches up to you. And so it kind of sounds like we really actually have a good budget. And I'm concerned that we just might make a situation worse in our future if those are the kind of things we get to cutting. But if anybody has ideas, something that's going to make a tangible difference, I'm all ears.
The last thing I'm trying to do is make a situation worse.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm simply hoping to get us from point A to point B, and I just want to make sure too that when we're cutting essential services, we've done everything we can. It's going to be really hard, frankly, to say, okay, the budget was 80 million and we cut 89 cents.
Yeah,
But we're adding on a $20 utility fee.
Can you remind me what you considered significant as to what we should cut?
When I say what?
Can you remind me what you considered significant when we were talking about, you were talking about cuts that you considered making? Can you remind me what those were?
I think a lot of things are significant, and I mean, it's really, what's significant to one person is not significant to someone else. A significant cut to a budget may be $100,000 and maybe $5 million to somebody else.
Right.
So it's really hard to do that, but if people.
What are your big hitters?
Pardon me?
What are your big hitters?
Most of my big hitters are not in the general fund, frankly. And I know that sounds weird and bad, but it's just, I mean, if nothing else, I hate to say it, Travis is back there, but some of it I think is optics when you're trying to go out and ask people for money.
Yeah, I heard about the employees, but I work for a for-profit company, and I own for-profit companies. And so that kind of concerns me, because in a for-profit company, you will have overlap between people you expect with high skill sets and about to leave, you will have an over a period where you train them. And that's significant to continue operations. So I think that might hurt us more in the future if we don't do stuff like that. So the kind of cuts that we're talking about right now are concerning to me.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying that, you know, we just have to be prepared, and I think Mr. One said it best. If the bond doesn't pass, it's gonna be really ugly. Because expenses are gonna be that much higher. So it's gonna mean that many more cuts.
Do you have a suggestion? Or you already did really tell us, right?
I mean, the only suggestion I have is to make a motion, so I can do that and we can vote.
I think Eric has put up all the
Yeah.
things we've talked about up there.
So I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the budget with the changes noted on the screen that Eric has so nicely laid out for us.
Well, let's make sure that people are aware of what the last two are that I added. One was, there was the question about raising it from $5 in order to pay for the community resource deputy, so that's an incremental $5 increase from 15 to 20. You may or may not want that. And then the last item was Ray said that he's got 134,000. I just labeled them as miscellaneous since they're likely in lots and lots of different pages.
I wanna be clear about my motion in that I would like to approve the budget with the $15 fee like we had talked about, like Dave said earlier. And then council can decide if they want to increase that by 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever they decide, but I think we should be conservative on our numbers for this purpose.
So are you want to amend the budget with this list of adjustments?
Yes, I would like to amend the budget with this list as stated.
Just to clarify, the miscellaneous CM reductions, which have not been listed, do they include the computers or the roof, or, not the roof? That was another fund, but, we
Yeah.
don't know what those are.
Yeah, I've
You
got.
basically said they were kind of harmless.
I've got 30 separate line items, you know, 500 here, 1,000 here, 2,000 there. You know, just a different line items, you know, hand tools, $1,000 reduction in budget. Sorry, Jonah.
I'm sorry.
Eric?
So, they're various things. Again, I don't take this job lightly. I go through and I squeeze where I think we can live without it in the budget, the budgeted amount, so.
I would like to second this, however, Gene, would you be willing to consider taking out that 175?
No.
Okay, I'll second it.
Keep that vote.
Leave the 175 on the bond.
Yeah, I'm just seconding what,
Yeah.
Councilor Long was suggesting, which includes your 175 being kept, going to the people.
And the 134 seems like it's a variety of little bitty things, and I'm all right with that one for you.
Yes. And I will get you the list.
You have a question
this
on
week.
the motion?
Yeah, I'm not clear on the resource officer. Is that gonna be added back in?
It is not up there.
But it's not a budget item.
Yeah, we're negotiating with the county.
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not a separate budget line item, but we will take that and we will negotiate for that. And it'll be wrapped into that final Multnomah County Sheriff number that'll come to council. So you'll get a chance to review it and vote on it then. But I always be careful about saying too much publicly about what we're trying to do in negotiations. And so, but I hear the message, and I think when we have the negotiating committee, you know, Jeffrey, Dave, Tanny, myself, and Ed, we hear loud and clear, I think, Mayor, that we would like to get that back in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the budget for the City of Troutdale for fiscal year 2025, 2026 as amended to include appropriations and a total deficit in the general fund of $4,983,546.
That's not at all what we're doing. You have a proposed budget before you that hasn't been amended yet. So if you're going to make these changes, you need to approve these changes. Then you would
Okay, I'm
have a
sorry, I thought it
motion
was the
to.
budget too.
We'll go approve the budget with these
Yeah.
adjustments.
Is that approving?
I have
Sounds
no
like
idea what the number is that you
they're
talked
asking.
about at the end. So,
Okay. For the amendment, would you be willing to, have your motion be to approve these changes?
And then we'll vote on the budget.
Then we'll vote on that.
Is that how we do it?
Yeah.
We'll vote
Sure.
on the amendment first.
Yes, that's, I'm fine to amend that, to do that.
All right.
If it makes it more clear. Oh, absolutely.
I second that.
Okay, we're voting on the changes only.
The changes
the
that.
potential adjustments,
Yes, with that budget. Yeah.
so it includes putting back the bond subsidy. It includes reducing the Beaver Creek Bridge appropriation by $175,000. It includes increasing the public safety studies, it's a new line item, for $75,000. It removes the Four Cities fire study on page 53, it's part of that. It removes $50,000 from legal services on page 51. It removes $50,000 from the Imagination Station repairs line item. It adds or increases the expenditure by $850,000 for the MCSO contract incremental between what is in the budget and what their most recent offer is, not their final offer, my apologies.
Yeah.
And it includes $134,000 of 30 pages of city manager adjustments.
But just for my own clarification, would the total appropriation amount not be without the contingency, right? So it'd be $4,983,546, or am I wrong?
I don't know.
Again, we're playing a numbers game here. I mean, whether you add the contingency in or out, you've got a $1.3 million deficit, but we don't know yet because these haven't been factored in. Or you take off the contingency, which has not been allocated to be spent yet, then you get your $4 million
Well, I'd
number.
be happy to take it off, okay? But it can't be spent if it's not.
But what I'm saying is we haven't added all these to that final number.
Okay. All right,
So I think that changes the amount to $4,983,000 before you deduct the $3 million contingency.
right, which is, yeah,
I
what I
don't know if
said.
that's the number you came to or not, but that's what I
Yeah.
come up with on the fly.
Okay. I think that was the number I said. Okay. So adjustments as presented. Okay.
Just want to be
Mr. White.
clear on the police and fire utility, is that?
There's no change to that with this amendment. It's as proposed by staff. I mean, of course, it's not yet approved by council. It's just as proposed in the budget.
Okay. Any other questions on the motion?
So we're approving the changes.
Yes.
We are not.
We are not.
Not the budget yet.
Right, we're not voting on the budget this time. The changes only. And these would be all of the changes, is the way I'm understanding it.
And then I have budget corrections that have been brought up from previous public comment that are not related to the general fund, that are a couple of items that we need to address. And then we would get to adopting the budget as a whole.
Okay. All right. Call the roll, please.
Stephen,
Yes.
Counselor Andrews,
Yes.
Heidi Timmerman,
Yes.
Counselor Allen,
Yes.
Chris Barney,
Yes.
Counselor One,
Yes.
Paul Wilcox,
No.
Counselor White,
Yes.
Victoria Rizzo,
Yes.
Counselor David, Rich Allen,
Yes.
Counselor Laney,
Yes.
Tammy Stephenson,
Yes.
Mayor Ritma.
Yes.
Okay, that passes.
Okay, if I can walk us through some budget corrections that were brought up, observations from previous public comment, as well as another error that the chair pointed out to me this afternoon when he sent in another question. So these are finance director errors in your proposed budget. What's in the book versus what I intended to be there. So as we talked about, the budget proposes the 7% rate increase. I had all of it in there, except I didn't list it. So all this does is list the revenue side. It does not change the expenditure side. It has no impact on the general fund. Storm sewer, same thing. I made the same, I got interrupted when I was doing the rate updates and only got the water done. So again, no increase in the expenditures, no impact in the general fund, no staffing changes. This simply fixes what should have been in the book that got printed. And then this was the error that I had in the Public Works Management. Tanny pointed out that my FTEs didn't total, and again, I had that formula problem that I had. So there's no increase in the staff. There's no impact on the general fund. This simply reflects what should have been there in the first place. So this is my summary of them: the sewer charges, stormwater charges, public works personnel, and then the offset is to the unappropriated funds in order for the balance. Again, no impact on the general fund on any of these three corrections, and had yours truly done his job properly, you wouldn't be addressing these. So what staff is requesting is that the City of Troutdale Budget Committee amend the proposed budget and approve the staff requested budget corrections as presented. So I'm happy to address any questions.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Rich Allen, second by John Leamy, that the City of Troutdale Budget Committee amend the proposed budget and approve the staff corrections, these budget corrections as presented. Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Is this, sorry, I just want to make sure this is approving just the changes in the budget, not the actual budget? Is that correct?
Approving the actual budget, just fixing those three previous errors that I highlighted so that it's corrected before you then approve the whole budget as amended.
This is just the correction.
Perfect, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I was confused when it said there was no increase in FTEs.
Correct.
There's gonna be 2 new hires.
The budget correction that I'm talking about.
Got it.
Didn't change
list
anything. Yeah.
properly.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, call the roll, please.
Counselor Andrews,
Yes.
Heidi Timmerman,
Yes.
Counselor Allen,
Yes.
Chris Barney,
Yes.
Counselor One,
Yes?
Paul Wilcox,
Yes.
Counselor White,
Yes.
Victoria Rizzo,
Yes.
Rich Allen,
Yes.
Counselor Laney,
Yes.
Tammy Stephenson,
Yes.
Mayor Ritma,
Yes.
Stephen.
Yes.
So now, can I make a motion that we approve the budget?
Just hang on just a
Just-
second.
Just hang on.
Sorry, Eric.
That's all right. I'm just trying to get things teed up here, so. And then I need to juggle a slide here in a minute, but there's the property tax levies have to be adopted because they're part of the budget, and so adopting the budget is sort of the last motion. So staff requests a motion that the City of Troutdale Budget Committee approve the property tax levy of the full permanent rate of 3.7652 per 100,000 of assessed value for the fiscal year 25-26 for the operating purposes in the general fund.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, two counselors again, Counselor One and Counselor Allen. The City of Troutdale Budget Committee approved the property tax levy of the full permanent rate of 3.7652 per thousand of assessed value for fiscal year 2025-26 for operating purposes in the general fund. Any discussion on the motion? Call the roll, please.
Heidi Timmerman,
Yes.
Counselor Allen,
Yes.
Chris Barney,
Yes.
Counselor One,
Yes.
Paul Wilcox, Counselor White,
Yes.
Victoria Rizzo,
Yes.
Counselor, Rich Allen,
Yes.
Counselor Leahy,
Yes.
Kenny Stapleton,
Yes.
Mayor Ritma,
Yes.
Gene Bent,
Yes.
Counselor Andrews.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a big one if it fails, actually.
Yeah, this is the out-of-date one. Here we go. I had two of them in there, one if, depending on which way the 175 went, so I need to make sure we adopt the correct one. So staff requests a so moved motion that the City of Troutdale Budget Committee approve the property tax levy in the amount of $404,800 for fiscal year 25-26 for payment of the general obligation on principal and interest in the debt service fund for the police facility bonded indebtedness. And this is different than what is in your budget because you put back the 175. What's in your budget had taken it out.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Victoria Rizzo, second by Heidi Timmerman. City Troutdale Budget Committee approved the property tax levy in the amount of $404,800 for fiscal year 2025-2026 for payment of general obligation bond principal and interest in the debt service fund for the police facility bond indebtedness. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Counselor Allen,
Yes.
Chris Barney,
Yes.
Counselor One,
Yes.
Paul Wilcox,
Yes.
Counselor White,
Yes.
Victoria Rizzo,
Yes.
Rich Allen,
Yes.
Counselor Leahy,
Yes.
Kenny Stapleton,
Yes.
Mayor Ritma,
Yes.
Gene Bent,
Yes.
Counselor Andrews.
Yes.
Heidi Timmerman.
Yes.
Okay, Counselor One, here you are. Staff requests that the City of Troutdale Budget Committee approve the entire proposed budget for the fiscal year 25-26 in total as proposed and amended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Counselor One, second by Rich Allen, that the City Troutdale Budget Committee approve the entire proposed budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 in total as proposed and as amended. Any discussion on the motion, Counselor White?
Yes, I do. Danny, you're our chair, so I'd like to know kind of where you're at on voting for this. Just like you pinned the council down by saying if you're gonna vote the same way you're gonna vote right now on the budget. So I'm just curious if you're comfortable voting for this budget or if there's something else you'd like to see.
You're asking me how I'm gonna vote?
I just want to make sure
Kind of.
you had a time to.
I'm actually a nay.
Okay,
Sorry.
can you elaborate?
Can I? I'll just say that given all the circumstances and what we've done, I don't feel we've met expectation. It's just my personal opinion.
That's fair.
My personal feelings, that's all.
Yeah. And then if I could make a comment on the budget, I think things I saw like the second street sweeper, I was thinking that'd be something we'd be fighting over until I realized it's being paid by the gas tax. And then, you know,
Unless they stop driving.
most of the budget was pretty flat from what I saw, except for, you know, Public Works with their almost $2 million office remodel. You know, it would have been nice to, I know when we did the Public Works building, we got pictures of it, we got offered tours of it to see what the need really was, because we don't know. It does seem like an awful lot of money at a bad time, but I'm willing to move on. I just thought that was worth it. And expecting no new hires and then getting two, you know, we're kind of painting our citizens into a corner to pass this new district. And, you know, I worry what might happen if it doesn't pass.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? It's on the floor. Okay, call the roll, please, Kimberly.
Chris Barney,
Chris?
Counselor One,
Yes.
Paul Wilcox,
No.
Counselor White,
Yes.
Victoria Rizzo,
Yes.
yes. Rich Allen,
Yes.
Counselor Laney,
Yes.
Tammy Stephenson,
No.
Mayor Ritma,
Yes.
Gene Ben,
Yes.
Counselor Andrews,
Yes.
Heidi Timmerman,
No.
Counselor Allen,
Yes.
Chris Barney.
No. So since I know you had so much time and so much fun, you can't wait to meet again. December 2nd is our next budget committee meeting, and of course, next year's dates. Meeting wrap up. Thank you for your service, your time and attention this evening.
Did that pass? Did that pass?
Yes, it did pass.
Oh, yeah. I know you need more than
Yeah, 9:30.
majority or something.
No, we're not done. No.
I have a question for you,
So our next meeting will be December 2nd. Okay,
At what time?
December 2nd will be the next time this committee will meet at the mid-year. Oh, continue.
Prepare to adjourn. Closing comments, if any. City manager, budget chair, others.
The only thing I would say, thank you. I don't like this budget any more than the rest of you do, but we were put in circumstances that we did not become aware of until this budget year. And it's an issue that we're gonna have to go down the road. And I will just tell you, as long as I live in this area, if I'm needed down the road for community meetings, et cetera, to push a ballot measure, I'm there for you. Because the citizens are gonna have to get a choice of what they want Troutdale to look like. If it's with the services that we have now, great, they'll have to approve more money. If they don't, then won't approve the more money. And I think that's the way to go, because I think we have a fabulous city, and I like the amenities that we have. But I'm here to support what happens in the next year and a half in the city to try to continue these great services with our great staff. But it's not easy, I know it all, so thank you so much.
I want to thank everybody for their time, and I know we've spent a lot of time on this, but I will just say this. This is $80 million of somebody else's money. And I think, you know, I think this is very important work that we do. And I think we have to answer for the work that we've done, and we've done the best we can with what we've had to deal with. And I, like you, Ray, love the city. I've been here, I don't know, like 57 years. And seen a lot of great things happen here. Yes, I am that old, yes. But I just am cautious about what's ahead. And that's where I come from. It's not anything personal to anybody. It's just I'm trying to look a step ahead. Okay? And again, I want to thank you all for your time and your dedication to the city. Anyone else wishing to comment? Yes, Mr. White.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Tanny, for continuing to be our chair and all the hard work you put into this budget. I know you probably have the best understanding of it of anybody in the room, and I respect your voice on this committee.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay, with that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make. Hold it, that's in the same household, does that work?
You gotta let the mayor do it, he doesn't get to make motions.
I think Dave had it first.
Right,
Okay.
normally.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Ritmus, seconded by Carol Allen to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
I see you're talking street sweeper.